South. And so one of the things that I'm proud of is, I haven't skipped any steps along the way. I mean, I've worked at all the different jobs, over the course of my career, but I found amazing coaches at D2, in the SAC that I was coaching as. Josh Schertz was in the league, at the time. And so, basketball is a competitive sport, and you have to be fortunate in this game. And I do believe that athletic directors are combing, those divisions more now because – learning to coach the game. One of the things that my dad always taught me is, because initially when you first get in, your mindset is all on recruiting, and that's how you kind of advance. Sign the right players and help your coach get it going, and then, ultimately you'll be able to advance. And he always encouraged me to, yes, focus on that, but don't forget you have to coach the game, and you have to be able to teach the game. And so I learned that at a pretty young age, that you have to be able to do it, when the not only when those lights come on, but well before those lights come on in the practices.
It's interesting because it's like those two parts of what's the best way to win? Is it recruiting or X's and O's? And it's like, well, it's probably
both.
It's both, but it's probably recruiting because you can X and O's your way to a win here and there, but you're probably not going to X and O's your way to a Final Four national championship without the players.
No question.
That are out there.
No question.
It's a little bit when you talk about while you're doing that, but learn the basketball side of it, because Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, like they spent a lot of their assistant coaching time in defensive meetings while being offensive guys because they wanted to learn about the defense. How do I become a better offensive coach? Well, I learn what the defense wants to do.
That's right.
So it's a little bit like that as well. Ryan Odom, head coach of Virginia, congratulations.
Thank you.
I appreciate you stopping by and talking with us. So very cool story.
Always a pleasure to see you guys each year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There you go. There's Ryan Odom, head coach of the Virginia Cavaliers. We are hanging out here in San Antonio. We continue with more Zone right after this. All right, folks, Jason Anderson from my friends over at Hart. Jason Anderson with you, Dylan Michaels. We are hanging out in San Antonio. It is the Final Four, and all number one seeds at this Final Four. Maybe the greatest collection of teams in the modern history of the NCAA tournament in the Final Four when we talk about 4 of the top 10 all-time teams in the KenPom era. Not just 4 of the top 10 this year. That would make sense because they're 1, 2, 3, 4 this year. But 4 of the top 10 teams in KenPom's history dating back to 1997. So that first year would be the Arizona Championship as a 4 seed. By the way, they were a 4 seed, and they were the number 7 team in America in the KenPom rankings. So that was before KenPom became, popular, year number 1. Also, interwebs. Many people at that time weren't just jumping on the internet to check out the KenPom ratings in 1997. Dylan, how often did you jump on the internet in 1997 to check out KenPom ratings for basketball? Quite often? Say strong to quite strong? 10 to 12 hours a day, just studying the KenPom, the Sagarin ratings all the time there in 97. But we have 4 of the top 10 teams of all time in the KenPom ratings this weekend. And one of the themes that I think we'll see is, and one of the themes that we'll be talking with people around, especially analysts that we get a chance to talk to, coaches as well. We'll talk with Porter Moser coming up in the 11 o'clock hour. But the era of college basketball that we're in, that I talked a little bit about, the era of college basketball in that the transfers are so prevalent that we see like the best player for Auburn was at Morehead State. The best player for Florida started at Iona. The best player for Houston was at Baylor. The best player for Duke was in high school. He transferred from high school. All 4 of those players transferred in from different places. Cooper Flagg just happened to transfer in from high school. But you see, like, this era, like what we are going through, and looking back pre-COVID, so then, we had the COVID, and then we had the COVID year. We had, the immediate eligibility to transfer. And if we go back to pre-COVID, in 2019, that Final Four with Virginia, Texas Tech, Michigan State, and Auburn. Out of the starting 5 for those 4 teams, it's 20 players. Starting 5 of those 5 teams. Dylan, you want to throw a dart as to how many players out of those 20? If you're there, I know you might be working and I can't see right now. So if you're working, then awesome. So 2019 pre-COVID, the 20 players that started on those 4 teams in the Final Four, how many started their careers at a different school?
Ooh.
Just transferred, started out of 20.
Pre-COVID,
pre-2019.
Okay.
20, so Virginia, Texas Tech, Michigan State, and Auburn. How many starters of the 20 started their careers at a different school?
I'm gonna go 13. Lucky
13 out of 20?
Yeah.
Transferred in?
Oh, my bad. I thought you meant stayed there. So I'll go 7 out of 20 transferred in.
There we go. Because I could have just done that math too.
No, my bad.
Yeah, 7 of the 20.
Yep.
Not a bad guess. 2 players of the 20 were
I figured it was
in.
low.
Right, and both of them were for Texas Tech.
That's
Mooney
what
and Tariq
I knew it was
Owens.
Texas Tech, and I couldn't remember who it was.
Yeah, they had 2 of them. Virginia, 0 transfers in their starting 5. Michigan State, 0 transfers in their starting 5. Auburn, 0 transfers in their starting 5. This year, 10 of the 20 starters started at a different school. So half of all the starters in the Final Four on Saturday started at a different school. Auburn has 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 5 starters for Auburn.
Damn near all of them.
Yep, 4 of the 5.
Where's Janiah Broom? Is he the only one?
Janiah Broom, no, Morehead State.
That's right.
Janiah Broom started. The only one is
44.
Pettiford.
Yep.
Pettiford, but he's a freshman.
Yeah.
So you got so you have Morehead State, Georgia Tech, FIU, and San Diego State for Auburn. Like those 4 of their 5. Florida, you've got also 4 of 5. So I think I actually did the math wrong. So I think it is actually 11.
Yeah, isn't Condon the only one on that one that was the Florida guy?
With Florida, you got Iona, Belmont, FAU, and Washington State. And then Houston, you have Baylor and Oklahoma are the only 2 there for Houston. And then Duke, you have Tulane. Yeah, Tulane. Tulane is the only starter there for Duke. So you've got 11 of the 20 that started somewhere else in this, which, but also it's like 11 of the 20, But some of those we don't realize, because for Florida, you know, you got a guy that transferred from Belmont, and he's been at Florida for 3 years. I mean, Walter Clayton, this is his second year from Iona. Janai Broom, how many times were people like, well, Janai Broom started at Auburn, right? And it's like, no, this is his third year at Auburn. He started at Morehead State, you know. You got FIU, you got San Diego State, guys that have been playing at those schools for a number of years. Baylor, one of their transfers that's starting there is, you know, in his second year with Houston. I said Baylor, but Houston from Baylor and LJ Cryer. You know, the only one that was a transfer and is the first year transfer for Houston is Uzan from Oklahoma. And so you've got guys that have transferred in, but they have been there a number of years. So it's sort of, we think, well, those guys have been there a little bit longer. And that's where we get into what I've talked about as if the future of the NIL is either retention and spending money on keeping your players, but also if you're somebody like Bill Self, retention wasn't really going to mean a whole lot for the guys that you maybe didn't want to come back anyway. Rylan Griffin, Hunter, DeJuan, and KJ couldn't come back. So, you know, whether that was probably Flory, you'd probably like to have Flory Badunga back. And there's still, I guess, a chance. I haven't seen any news or updates or anything. The expectation is that he's going to go to Indiana, but the expectation was that Walter Clayton was going to go to St. John's. So, you know, we don't know what happens until that particular player commits and shows up on campus. But for Bill Self, it's obviously not about retention. It's about almost a clean slate and finding guys to come in and be difference makers, shot makers, and not like role players, because it really felt like Kansas had 3 starters who were sort of role players.
But you almost need, like, it's like a team building flip of college basketball where you can't just go get a bunch of 5 stars and roll the basketballs out. Like you have to have those role guys. You just can't have 5 role guys.
Yeah,
you know, which is our issue.
Yeah, and it's like I do think Calipari, I've said for a number of years, I think is a much better coach than people give him credit for. I also think he panics at the end of games, and so when people talk about his lack of coaching, I think there's something to it from that standpoint. They lose close games because he oftentimes panics. Unfortunately for Kansas, that did not happen in the first round.
Right.
But it did happen. It did happen against Texas Tech. Right. 2012, that's true. But it Memphis in 2008, it did.
Yeah.
In the Final Four when they were undefeated in 2015.
I mean, hell, you could say this year not to Kansas, but to
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
Yep. They have some, and it's like, you know, you had a bunch of Kentucky fans that were like, oh, it's the full Cal experience. An entire, you know, new team. And the full Cal experience, all new team, excuses along the way about how young they are, underseeded, you know, talented, you know, a team that is going to go and knock off a higher seed, and then, oh, by the way, then you lose a close game that you were controlling. Oh, it's the full Cal experience.
Free throws,
but
too.
like, yeah, exactly, 100%. But it's like every year, what I give him credit for is that every year he had a new team, and he had to turn that new team into a team that could make a run.
With their 2 Hall of Fame coaches with a 10 seed. Like, yeah, like you're right.
Yeah,
he can coach.
right.
It's just like people nitpick and figure out ways to tear things down, and that's just his fault.
He can get guys to play well together, and I think Bill Self can do that too.
Absolutely.
And we'll see how good he is at a full turnover, because John Calipari, his teams at Kentucky were pretty good defensively throughout the years. And it's like, okay, so we took a bunch of new guys, and they turned out to be pretty good KenPom teams on defense. Well, therefore, he probably knows how to coach a little bit. So now we're going to see with a lot of these schools, like what it was like that he was going through with the 5 stars. We'll take a timeout. We'll talk some Chiefs with Matt Lane next. WHB, Jason Anderson with you. Dylan Michaels heading up until 2 o'clock. We'll talk some more college basketball as the show rolls along. Hanging out at the Final Four in San Antonio. Our coverage presented by Easton Roofing and National VA Loans. Let's talk some NFL football, some Chiefs football with Matt Lane, KC Sports Network, KC Laboratory Podcast, joining us here in the zone. Matt, what is up, brother? How are you, sir?
Listen, we're doing good. We're in the month of April now. We're rounding up here. The Final Four is about to get going. We got the end of college basketball coming up. We got the draft right around the corner. It's a good time of the year right now.
Is the entire state, watching on Saturday night to root for or against, obviously, with Duke in the Final Four? And what's the feeling around there? Is this Duke's championship to cut down the nets on Monday and everybody else is chasing the Blue Devils?
Oh, yeah. The entire state. It feels like anytime there's one of these historical college basketball programs that are here, the entire country is either rooting for or against them. It doesn't matter where you are, but they are very much amped in the area. But where I live right in the Triad, so I am surrounded by Duke fans, North Carolina fans, you got some Wake Forest fans, little NC State. So I got all sorts of different types of people around here. So it is funny. Anywhere I go, there is people hardcore excited, and there's people that are nervous that it's about to happen. So it's a funny situation.
Matt Lane is our guest. If you didn't know, he lives in North Carolina and does a great job covering the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, let's talk about some of the news that came out yesterday. Clark Hunt wants to make the Chiefs the Christmas Day version of the Dallas Cowboys. Also wants to play every year in an international game, or wants to be at least open to that. Brazil looks like it's a real possibility on that Friday night for the Chiefs and Chargers in Brazil. And wants to be, quote, the world's team. They're already the number one draw in the NFL the last few years, so passing the Cowboys. What do you think about Clark Hunt saying the Chiefs on Christmas Day, a yearly thing like the Cowboys and Lions are on Thanksgiving?
I mean, I'm not the one that has to play in it like the players do, right? So from that perspective, it's I guess it's fine with me. Sometimes watching the games can be a little difficult on those particular days, but from a marketing perspective, or just even from there might be an area here to not just make more money, but to make the team more popular, which is always nice. It makes a ton of sense. And, it'll take getting used to. And we don't know if we love the NFL taking over Christmas Day, especially if your favorite team is always playing on that particular holiday. But you look now, I wonder if Cowboys fans or Lions fans kind of thought the same thing when this happened with Thanksgiving, and now they've just grown accustomed to it. So I think you just kind of have to give it some time. So I'm fine with both of them, and I think the international thing's really cool. Again, I'm not the one having to travel and play, so it doesn't impact me a ton. But in terms of watching, I think it's really cool that the Chiefs get out there and go across the entire globe to play these games and build up these fan bases.
Yeah, I found myself a little conflicted yesterday, although I lean much more on the side of I am excited and more okay with the Chiefs playing every year on Christmas. I conflicted in that I don't want every year to be having to plan around. I'm watching a game on Christmas with the kids and all of that stuff. But the reason I lean more on the side of, let's do it, is I can remember my whole life growing up and just why don't the Chiefs get national respect? Why is it that, here in this area we don't get looked at the same way and given sort of the benefit of the doubt, or preferential treatment like the East Coast and the West Coast and some of those big market teams? Not understanding it as a child growing up, just knowing that, I feel like the Chiefs were a pretty awesome team and franchise. And certainly in the 2000s, 2000 aughts, that was a struggle. But now we see that. And so the fact that they are getting this love to where networks, Matt, are fighting over Chiefs games and not willing to give up Chiefs games. And internationally, the league is saying, we want to send the Chiefs. And on a Friday in Brazil, we want the Chiefs to be a part of that game because that game has not been purchased yet by a streaming service. So therefore, now the streaming service will be paying for a Chiefs game, a standalone Friday night number 2 game of the NFL season that includes the Chiefs. So part of me is do I really want to spend every Christmas planning our day around a Chiefs game? But also, you know what, man, we got we got the Chiefs getting so much national respect that let's do it, man. Let's just fully embrace and dive headfirst into the Chiefs being the Christmas Day Cowboys.
No, absolutely. And, maybe this is a little bit selfish, but, here I am as a out-of-town fan, so I don't get to see every single game on, local television. And unless I want to break into what, the Sunday ticket stuff is and everything, these standalone games like that being on national broadcast, whether it's a standalone international game, whether it's always on Christmas Day, not only does that make those games available to me every single time, or and even beyond me, just other people living out of state, you're building up a national brand. And so think about how many times we see a Sunday night football game that's the Giants or the Cowboys when neither team is particularly good, or the Washington Commanders and the Giants or somebody. They're always on TV because they do have these big national brands they've built up over time. Having the Chiefs, a smaller market team, find a way to continue to put their, get a grip on that kind of coverage around the world, around all of this broadcast stuff, is only going to benefit Chiefs fans that aren't maybe local to Kansas City. It's only going to help grow the fan base. And, as a fan of the team, that's got to be not a goal or anything, but something that you are accepting of. So I get some inconvenience aspects of it from a fan, from a watcher. I understand that it's probably difficult on the players and the coaching staff at times, but in the grand scheme, I do think it's probably a net positive for the Chiefs as a whole and Chiefs fans as a whole moving forward.
Yeah, the people that I feel bad for are, when it's a home game at Arrowhead, are the workers that are out there that don't necessarily sign up to work Christmas Day. So whether it's ticket takers or those, work in the parking lot or concessions or ushers and things like that, I feel bad for them. Unless there's extra, hopefully they would get paid extra. Hopefully there's extra money, and whether that's worth it to them or not, hopefully they're taken care of. But I feel bad for them because they're not signing up. They can't just sell their tickets if they want to, or buy tickets if they want to do that, or, watch the game or not watch the game, whatever it might be. They have to plan their day around that. So I do feel bad for them, those that may not want to be a part of Christmas Day every single year. And also I do wonder, Matt, how much can you be – how much can you compare yourself to the Cowboys or Lions of Thanksgiving if it isn't a home game every year on Christmas? Because I'm not sure it will be a home game. So if you're traveling and it's just, the Chiefs play on Christmas Day, we don't know where they're going to play, whereas we know the Cowboys and Lions on Thanksgiving are playing at home. I don't know if that makes a difference one way or another, but I feel like if Clark Hunt wants to be the Christmas Day Cowboys, then, Arrowhead Stadium or whatever the new stadium will be in 2031, 32, and on, that would be a home game.
And maybe this is them getting their foot in the door based on hey, let's just make sure we're playing every single, year to start. And then from there, it kind of goes into, okay, now the next step is making it always a home game rather than being a game that maybe rotates around the location or something like that. And I don't know for sure if that's on the docket or not, but I think it might be more palatable for the NFL as a whole, or for the other owners, I guess, would have to agree upon it, if the Chiefs start out just playing every Christmas, and then eventually that alters into being, okay, since we're willing to play on Christmas Day every time, throw us this bone of letting us be a team that gets to host somebody every single time. So yeah, maybe it's more of a strategic thing right now to not go all in on that.
Visiting with Matt Lane, KC Sports Network, KC Laboratory Podcast. I wanted to get your thoughts on the story that Mike Sando did at The Athletic and asking anonymous execs about different teams' acquisitions. And with the Kansas City Chiefs, the conversation was around Jalen Moore and the Chiefs signing him, backup San Francisco left tackle, to be their left tackle. And some of the quotes here, I'll just read them to you in case you haven't seen it, but also for listeners if they haven't seen or heard the quotes from unnamed executives. Quote, Jalen Moore has had durability issues. He's never been a frontline player, and he's been protected in a system that is not drop back heavy, so I do not love that move. Another exec said, I'm sure some will say they did a bad job there, but really they took a $15 million shot at a guy who has upside, and if it doesn't work out, at worst, he's going to be an overpaid swing tackle for them next year. It's not a terrible outcome, whereas Tennessee gave Daniel Moore $50 million over 2 years, which is crazy to me. The last exec, which I thought was interesting here, Matt, is he says they realize they are a defensive football team with a Hall of Fame quarterback, and they're saying, Pat, it's on you to elevate your skill players. We miscalculated on your protection, and it cost us a three-peat. Now we're going to recalibrate up front. So there's three different ways of viewing that. One is, bad move, he's not that good, and he's got durability issues. Another one is, man, you take a chance on a guy with upside, and if it doesn't work out, oh well, it's a cost of doing business. And another exec saying, well, they're a defensive team, and this is just what they're showing Patrick Mahomes, that you're going to have to elevate everybody because it's going to be a defensive side of the football team that you are moving forward. That one I don't agree with, but I thought it was interesting, those three different views from different execs of what they thought about Jalen Moore signing.
Yeah, and I haven't read the whole article, so just hearing those, I don't know if all of the moves have such like a wide variety of thoughts from different executives around the NFL. I'd assume they would. 32 teams, all these different people working in the front office, there's differing opinions across the board. There's probably differing opinions in each and every single one of these teams, front offices amongst about the same players. So it makes sense that there's such a wide variety. I'm with you. I don't know if I agree with number 3. Like, I don't know if I think that's the Chiefs' goal is to be a defensive-minded team and putting it all on Patrick Mahomes. I think that's what has happened the last couple seasons, and I think we finally got to the point last year where it looked like it wasn't fun for the offense. It looked like and then the offense just couldn't figure it out when they had to, and that was the first time. So they found the floor at which they can't go to that level again and continue to have the success that they want. Now, so I don't know if that's the plan going forward. I do think that's what they have done. As far as like Jalen Moore, I guess I fall somewhere in between or borrowing parts from both the first and second executive there. Is I don't know if I'm fully on board with Jalen Moore as a move that's definitely going to work out. He has been a backup for the 49ers, and understandably, backing up Trent Williams makes a lot of sense. Like, that's hardly, a negative that you were a backup to Trent Williams. But on the other side, the 49ers have been starting a pretty poor right tackle this entire time in Colton McKivitz. Could Jalen Moore not be good enough to, whether switching sides is an issue or not, to overtake Colton McKivitz? That does give me a little bit of pause in terms of what the ultimate upside could be. And it's an entirely different offense he's moving to. So I understand that there are some risks there, but $15 million in with today's salary cap, they're hardly sinking cost if it doesn't work out. It's a slightly overpaid swing tackle who's making, I think, 5% against the salary cap this year. The only offensive tackles essentially below that are even attempting to be starters are rookies. So he's about as low paid as you can get for a guy that's legitimately competing for a starting tackle spot. So I don't think that they sunk too much money into this. What is a pretty big gamble, I do believe.
Yeah, and next year, I know the thought about if it doesn't work out, you got an overpaid swing tackle, but if it doesn't work out, you also could move on and save $8 and change against the salary cap. I mean, it's a $10 million dead cap hit, but you could save $8 million there if you want to move on and don't feel like it's worth it to pay that guy, $18, $19 million against the cap. So there is an out from that standpoint too. And one of the quotes, there were differing opinions on DK Metcalf to Pittsburgh as well. Like one of them was, and just to your point about are all the different ones, it's the first one I found. It said, in what world do you look at DK and go, let's give that guy $30 million and trade a 2 for him? And then another one was said, anytime Pittsburgh brings in a receiver, I'm tending to say, okay, they've gotten it right more times than not, so they probably know something I don't. It's kind of a backhanded, it's kind of a damning with faint praise. Yeah. So there were differing opinions there, but sort of feels like it was somewhat on the same plane. Visiting with Matt Lane, KC Sports Network, KCSN.substack.com, the KC Laboratory Podcast. We're about 4 days away, Matt, from the release of the draft guide. Thankfully, let's go. Let's get this thing going. Cannot wait for that thing to be released. And the next time we talk to you will be the week before the NFL draft, because we're looking at 3 weeks from today when the first round is. So I'm sort of curious as we start to hone in and maybe people getting better ideas and seeing all these different mock drafts. If there is a position that is somewhat unexpected in the first round, I think defensive tackle would be expected. I think offensive tackle would be expected. Heck, offensive guard could be expected. I don't know, just offensive line in some way, shape, or form. I shouldn't even say defensive tackle, just defensive line in general. Maybe even cornerback, who knows. But if there's a position that would be somewhat unexpected in the first round, is there one that you would lean more towards than another that said, you know what, this may not be expected, but I could see them taking this position?
Yeah, let's just take the trenches off the board here, because I think everybody is expecting a trenches-esque pick or wouldn't be surprised by that. So let's take them off the board. And I'm about to make a lot of Chiefs fans uncomfortable here. I think running back is a possibility here in the first round. And I know after the Clyde Edwards-Helaire aspect, that makes people a little bit nervous, and we have to separate player from everything else, but it did happen. So I understand people having hesitations and the positional value aspect, but everybody spent the last year, 6 months now, telling it's not the strongest draft up top, but then you have a long stretch where a bunch of guys are roughly the same level of talent. So in my mind, that means there's maybe not as much to be gained in terms of positional value. If everybody in this is, from ranking 15 to 45 or to 50 or 60 are all equally talented players, maybe you're no longer like too much worried about positional value because it's just such a wide group of guys that are all graded similarly. And so when I look at the running back position, I think this might be a year where they come off the board a little bit faster. If you look around Chiefs fans or any fan of a team that needs a running back, everybody has the same 3 or 4 favorite round 2 running backs. Everybody wants one of the Ohio State running backs, TreVeyon Henderson or Quinshon Judkins. Everybody wants Caleb Johnson out of Iowa or Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. If you have these 4 running backs and obviously Ashton Jeanty that everybody wants on their team, do we really think that they are going to last 63 picks and the Chiefs are going to be able to get them at the end of round 2? So if they want a bona fide, true 3-down starting running back, they might not feel like they can get that guy at pick 63 anymore, and it might be a little bit of like a risk-reward in terms of taking a running back now in another position later or vice versa. So it just all depends. So I think if the board falls really poorly for them and the trenches aren't the guys that they have graded highly left, I could see running back being something they sneaky consider even as early as round 1, which, again, I know would make a lot of Chiefs fans a little uncomfortable.
What would you look at as a type of running back then? Because that's been a conversation. I think most people are on board that the Chiefs are at least going to look to take a running back. Doesn't mean that the board will fall in their favor and the way they want it to, and a running back will be available at the right spot for them to draft and somebody that they feel like will fit. I thought they were probably wanting to draft a running back last year as well. I didn't think they were looking at a safety, and it turns out that they weren't even really looking at a safety, but the board said Jaden Hicks shouldn't be here at this point, so you take him. And it has given them the opportunity to walk away from Justin Reed, not pay that money, and hand that over to Jaden Hicks. But with the running back spot, most everybody feels like that's going to take place. So from your standpoint and your opinion and your view, what would you like to see them draft? Is it an all-around running back to replace Pacheco, who's on the final year of his deal? Or would you rather them look for a specific skill set that adds something to the room that is not there right now? Obviously, I'm talking about speed or quickness or explosiveness or however way you want to define what seems to getting outside the tackles and stretching sideline to sideline as opposed to just the wide receiver jet motions and handoffs that way. Is it an all-around running back that you say this guy's now going to take the reins from Pacheco and we'll let Pacheco walk? Or would you like a specific type of skill that enters this running back room this year that's missing?
Yeah, and this is, it's tricky because it all depends on, I think, where you're having to take or where you're taking this running back, right? If we're talking like they don't get around to taking a running back until round 4, then you are going to be looking a little bit more skill specific. And if that's the spot, you're looking more of as a rotational guy, somebody to add to the room. And then you are looking, I think, for a home run hitter, a dynamic runner, because you're not getting an all-around running back, I don't think, in round 4. You're not getting somebody that's going to come in, be a first, second, and third down guy. You're kind of looking at people with specialized skill sets. So if it's, on day 3, I think you want to add a dynamic guy that can, break off big runs. And maybe it's not even home runs, but maybe it's just the ability to hit 15, 20-plus yard runs, which is something that I don't think Pacheco or Kareem Hunt did very well for this team last year. But in the perfect world, I think they go ahead and get this done very early on in the draft, and they get a full-on, 3-down running back, someone that can come in and replace Pacheco next year, maybe take the job early on this year, because I think what they have right now is Kareem Hunt and Pacheco, they're both kind of limited runners, and that Pacheco has to be used on certain style of runs. Kareem Hunt has to be used on a certain style of runs, and even both of those guys, they're not striking any fear in defenses. Teams are still playing super light boxes. They're not respecting the run at all. Their linebackers are dropping in coverage or reading coverage first and playing the run second because they're not afraid of a 4 or 5 yard run coming off of those guys. They just need somebody that, when they put him out there, gains a little bit of respect for defenses. And I do think that, that's probably somebody that's more than a rotational runner, but rather a true starter. I just don't know if I can fully endorse also spending that round 1 pick that we were talking about on a player like that, if that's what it came to.
No, I'm with you on that. And I do wonder, positional value matters in the draft, and who you're drafting and the money that you're going to be spending on that particular player in free agency and replenishing that is smart business. We're seeing the price of running backs go up a little bit. It's limited draft picks. Maybe if they trade some picks, trade down, acquire more picks, I don't know if there's a possibility of them taking 2 running backs in this draft. Again, limited. It's not, if it was the 2022 draft and they had 10, 11 picks, then I could maybe think that more of a possibility. And I bring that up is, the 2 running backs may be, we're going to take more of an all-around guy, somebody that we can hand the ball off to first and second down and be your typical running back that can do a number of different things. And then also maybe later in the draft, we're going to take somebody with a specific skill set of speed and home run ability and burst, and we're going to combine those guys for the next 4 years. And that's what we're going to be. And the main guy's going to take over for Pacheco, and this guy's going to be our home run hitter in the same draft of deep running backs. If they had more picks, I think that if they had more picks, I would think that would be more of a possibility. I just wonder with the limited picks if that's a route they would go.
Yeah, with the limited amount of picks, it might be hard to see that. And I don't think that the Kareem Hunt contract, I don't think Isaiah Pacheco's current standing on the team or Elijah Mitchell's contract, I don't think that combines to say we can't take a running back early. But I also think they might have enough bodies that it would be a little bit of a deterrent between adding multiple running backs this year, just because you only have so many roster spots for that position. So you would just have to get real choosy about who was making the roster and who wasn't. So it might be hard to find space for two guys, but definitely one player I could see. And I did want to say, too, when we're talking about, like, all-around running back, I think one area the Chiefs get stuck on right now is not just, like, first, second, and third down, but the ability to run outside zone and the ability to run power and the ability to be an inside zone runner. Like, none of their running backs can run every concept well, and I think that just makes them easier to defend. Yes. So having somebody that can run everything versus be a specialized running concept player, I think would also go a long way in just improving the run game.
Yeah, the outside zone, I'd like to see that return a little bit more with different players. So we'll see. Matt Lane, KC Sports Network, KC Laboratory Podcast. Matt, let the people know where they are able to pre-order the draft guide that comes out in 4 days.
Yeah, it comes out here in 4 days. We got, I think we're up to over 375 grades that are going to be in there, and then you got over 200 write-ups to tell you, everything about the player that you want, plus how they are going to fit with your Kansas City Chiefs. So can't recommend it enough if you are a Chiefs fan that also wants to be prepared for the draft. If you would like to pre-order it, you can go to kcsn.gum.co, and you can get it /25. That's kcsn.gum.co/2025, and you can get that KCSN draft guide pre-ordered right there. It will be out, I believe, on the 7th at the latest. It will be out April 8th where everybody can download it and check it all out. But again, like I say every time I'm on here, if there's one thing that I do that I am very proud of that I want to say, please, if you are a Chiefs fan, I can't recommend this more. It is this draft guide, because if you like the draft, there's nowhere you are going to find the same kind of information to be ready for this upcoming big deal.
Nope. I've told people that a lot, that if you're going to be paying attention to the draft, there is one draft guide out there that has that extensive research and write-ups and study of all these different prospects and how it relates specifically to the Chiefs. And it is the KCSN draft guide. It's great stuff. Get it every single year. Matt, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it, sir. Enjoy the craziness next couple of days there in North Carolina.
Oh, absolutely will. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. There's Matt Lane, KC Sports Network, KC Laboratory Podcast. There in North Carolina, where the Duke Blue Devils and, of course, NC State's got a new head coach, and North Carolina will be rooting against Duke. All of that stuff that typically goes on. But Duke, the favorites here this weekend in San Antonio, and Matt Lane joining us to talk some Kansas City Chiefs football. And that running back thing continues to be interesting. That I didn't know where he was going to go when I asked him what position would be somewhat unexpected. And he went running back. I'm like, all right, so let's talk about it then if that's the case. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. And we'll talk with Oklahoma's head coach, Porter Moser, who was with Loyola Chicago coaching the SEC. We'll talk to Porter Moser coming up next right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Radio. Our coverage presented by Easton Roofing and National VA Loans. Joining us now is the head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners, and Porter Moser joining us here in the zone. Porter, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Dylan, is Todd around there? Is he just stalking? Is he listening in? Is he trying to get on the air here?
I
Todd
think he
Lebo,
went to get
one of
some
our
popcorn, some food, snacks. So he's,
higher
he's in his
ed,
office. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the executives there at the station is Boomer Sooner, so he's an OU grad. So,
that's awesome.
Yes,
Boomer.
That's exactly right. I'm not going to finish that for you, but it's all good. Porter Moser is our guest. So, I'm always curious about as we're here from a coach's standpoint. Like, you look around and you guys have done this before. You have done this before. And that run, like, what do you remember from that time? Was it just a blur, like when you start to then you get to the Final Four here in San Antonio with Loyola? Yeah, I know you're at Oklahoma now, but at Loyola, was it just a flash?
It's been nostalgic. We rolled in last night to San Antonio, and the last time I was in San Antonio was our team. Yeah. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say two huge family members of my Loyola family, one's now an assistant, are from Kansas City. Clayton Custer and Ben Richardson.
Yes.
We're part of that Loyola team, and Clay's on my staff now. But, it was just such a surreal time in your life because you're at these mid-major program, and to be able to fight through the pressure of the Missouri Valley tournament first. We were really, really good. We were really good, and we were 25-5 going to that tournament. And that Northern Iowa game, that first game, we always say that was probably the hardest pressure because if you lose, you're out. And we had a great team. So we won the tournament, and then getting to that Final Four, it's just surreal with the people we had. And I'll tell you one quick story. People just asked me about a wow moment with that because it is, now with the NIL and the retention and the transfer portal, you don't know if that's going to happen again. And you saw this, the 16 teams this year were on the Power Four. But a wow moment for me was in Loyola had 26 losing seasons out of 30 before 2011 when we took over. And everyone told me, because I'm from Chicago, Porter, it's a pro town. And I said, no, it's a sports town.
Yeah.
If they win it. So in 2016, diehard Cubs fan, sorry. And I'm
you're Ben Zobrist.
I am too. So so in 2016, I'm going down Lakeshore Drive, and the Cubs won the World Series, and the skyline said, "Go Cubs." And I'm like, I had chills. It was the coolest thing to see the city light up and go Cubs. I had a picture of the skyline, framed it, put it in my house. 2018, we beat Kansas State. Going to the Final Four, my phone's blowing up. The city of Chicago, go Loyola.
Wow.
The skyline. It was all maroon and the Hancock Building in downtown. And I have them side by side at my house. And it was just to see everyone get behind us like that. And and then we had our matriarch, Sister Jean, kind of lead the way as well. But she
became a star.
Yeah.
She was kind of the star of the tournament.
Don't. If she was here, she'd correct you. She says, hey, international star. That's what she would do in a heartbeat.
That is great. Visiting with Porter Moser, Oklahoma head coach. The SEC was such a bear this year in conference, and you've played in different or coached in different conferences and things like that. What was it about it this year, and what do you think is, looking back, some of the reasons why the SEC has become this conference that gets 14 teams and has 2 teams in the Final Four, has a number of teams in the Elite Eight, and is now viewed as the best conference in college basketball, certainly this year historically?
Yeah, I'm really the good luck charm. I've been at Oklahoma my first 3 years, the Big 12, and it still is an elite conference. But it was, at first it was 10 teams, and they were talking about 9 or 10 teams getting in. So it was, but then this year going into the SEC, that became like unprecedented league. 14 of the 16 teams spent time in the top 25. But what it is, you could just see the positional size. The positional size and athleticism night in and night out in the SEC is like nothing college basketball has seen. Look at the 2 teams that are here, Florida and Auburn. When you walk up and see them on the court, how positionally, 6'11", 6'10", 6'9". They're pro models.
Yeah.
And I just think that was just and you've got to keep them up, as well as the physical challenge. You have to keep them up mentally. We went through that at Oklahoma. We got off the gate 13-0, 10th in the country. We beat Michigan, who won the Big Ten conference tournament. Louisville finished second in the ACC. Arizona finished second. We had all those wins in non-conference. We get in the league, and all of a sudden we're at Alabama, at Florida, at Auburn, at Missouri, and you're just sitting there going, those are all like top 10 teams, and we lost them. And you have to mentally get your guys ready to get going again and not get down, because you can get beat up mentally in a role like that, because there's no 4 there's no good 4-game stretch. It's all top 25 4-game stretches.
Yeah.
And you mentally have to keep yourself going.
And it's like it's a good and a bad, a pro and con, yin yang type thing, to where you have those tough games, but along the way you feel like every single game is a tournament resume building win if you get it.
Absolutely, and that's the mindset you had to set with your guys. There's a path. There's opportunity. It's not like you have to go play 3 quad 3 games that don't matter. Get through those to get to this quad 1.
Right.
And I remember we lost back-to-back like heartbreakers. We lost to Kentucky on a last-second shot, and then we go to Mississippi. At Mississippi, they're top 15 too. And kid hits a 3 with 4 seconds left and to beat us. And we come home, and we're like, we had to play Missouri. And we're like, we were, they were top 15. They were 15. And just getting them up after those 2 losses, we beat Missouri. Then we had to go to Texas, our rivalry, on their senior night, beat them. 2 quad 1 opportunities.
Yeah.
Then we come into the conference tournament, play Georgia, another quad 1 opportunity. So you get opportunities. So that's the mindset you have to look towards.
Do you, like, after the games are over, do you want to fight Mark Pope with the 2 1-point losses? Like, is there like a wrestling match going on there? Like, what takes place? Because both of those, my in-laws are Kentucky fans, so
yeah.
But both those games, it's like heartbreaking from your standpoint.
Oh, it was just miserable, especially the one in the tournament. We had a timeout. We're talking about what we were doing, and it's literally, you could just see me pull my hair out. It was opposite of what we were supposed to do. Like we were going to trap Ortega, and he turned the corner, and we were supposed to put him in a box and on that thing. And so it happens. They made a play, but you know what? Our guys, we were down 12. Yep. It's just like the year. You go through a year, people count you out. We were down 12, fought back to take a 1-point lead, and it was just crickets in there. It was crickets because it was all Big Blue Nation in there, and awesome. It was in Nashville. But
it was one of the crazier comebacks in the last 2 minutes or so. It was just phenomenal to watch. It was really cool.
Yeah, we got to finish.
I know that. Visiting with Porter Moser. Something really cool a couple of days ago. You hired an assistant GM by the name of Trae Young, who's in the NBA. How does that work? Like, this is all, like, everything we're doing is uncharted waters. And I know the NIL and transfer portal. I didn't think we would see NBA players be assistant GMs at college basketball, but that's what we're doing now.
Well, it's really they're ambassadors. Because
I like the assistant GM.
Yeah, exactly. That's because Steph did it with Davidson. And that's what, conversing with Trae and everything. Trae lives there. Trae just embraces his roots. He understands Norman, and Oklahoma meant a lot for him in his career, and he meant a lot to us. And he's just one of those guys, that just embraces. I remember Jeremiah this summer. He puts his arm around him, and he's trying to help him, pour into him. But for him to be an ambassador in this world of NIL, and to help other people with Oklahoma ties to come back and help with NIL, and then also just to know, that here's a guy that's made it, is going to be an ambassador and help out and be a part of our group. He's got his run, so he's trying to win a championship himself. But it's great to have him associated with us.
Do you see more of that in college basketball? More NBA players?
You're going to see it. Yeah, you're going to see it.
I would guess.
You're going to see it. Them come back and be ambassadors, and it's not like they're every day in and out of the operations. It's just they want to give back. They want their name and being able to just be mentor of the guys or help out and because we all got to push. It's just a different world with NIL, and to have him behind this is a huge for us.
Visiting with Porter Moser, Oklahoma head coach. What's the future going to be like for a guy like you at Oklahoma when revenue sharing starts? Because it's not just like, okay, you've got more money to spend, but now you're trying to divvy up the pie. What percentage goes there? You're at a football school. What's life going to be like with that, trying to navigate those waters of maybe an unknown of what the future of college basketball will be like with the revenue sharing?
So I've been in this profession, I think 34 years, 35 years, and it's uncharted waters.
Yeah.
And it just seems like it's changed every year these last 4 years. Now, all of a sudden, we got revenue share, and then there's an uncertainty about outside true NIL compared to the revenue share. So is it just going to be your cap, or are you going to have outside? Because this last couple of years, it's been the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
With
air quotes NIL.
Yeah, like the name, image, and likeness. Yes. We all can sit here and laugh at what that really is. But now we're waiting to see, is it really going to be a guardrail with that in your cap? So you have to plan like it is, and there's all different kind of guardrails. And I'm one of these guys that I really truly believe that the athletes should get compensated, but they just threw it out there and like threw paint on the wall and just see what stuck, and it was just there wasn't a great plan with it, and that's what we're trying to navigate to find the plan that works, because there's some things right now that don't work on what we're having to go through and navigate this right now, and it's just but it's the new world, and you either lean in and adjust or you get left behind. And that's what we have to figure out.
Porter Moser, our guest. Last one for you. I've wondered this. I don't know if you wear like a watch or a Fitbit or something, but how many miles do you walk during a game on the sideline?
It's this great new diet. It's called stress. No, I just have always been that way. Just, I guess I don't sit still. It's funny because I always tell my assistants to save a chair for me, and I sit down.
They say, what for?
And I don't think the referee has the ball up on the jump ball before I'm up. I don't know. Maybe it's superstition. I have to start on the bench.
I loved watching like when Mizzou was there in Norman, and it's like you got Dennis Gates over here that doesn't move and has no expression, looks stoic or sometimes comatose, and then you've got Porter Moser and just these different ways of coaching. I mean, it just works for different
Dennis
people.
does such a good job with just keeping it calm and watching his guys and making adjustments. He does a great job. I've known him. He's from Chicago. I'm from Chicago. I've known him a long time.
That's right. Porter Moser. Hey, best of luck continuing moving forward. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Head coach of Oklahoma, Porter Moser, joining us here. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next. Jason Anderson with you, Dylan Michaels. Thank you to Porter Moser. We went to break there, and as I was, telling him bye and appreciated, I turned off his mic, and he leaned back into the microphone, and they went to break, and he goes, as we were breaking, he goes, I was going to give another boomer there. I said, well, sorry about that. You got one in. You got a boomer in, so there you go.
Todd was ready. He didn't want to leave him hanging twice. So
was he there just in case?
He was there just in case,
Oh,
he was on standby. No, I'm kidding. He wasn't.
Yeah, I'm just kidding about feeling bad too. I don't feel bad about that at all in the slightest. Not even one little bit. So thank you to Porter Moser. We talked with Ryan Odom, new head coach of Virginia, in the 10 o'clock hour. We're going to talk with Kenny Blakeney coming up at noon, who was a part of those awesome Duke teams at the beginning of the 90s. His freshman year was their second of back-to-back national championships, and then he goes on to play in the national championship again a couple of years later in that loss to Arkansas, but playing with Grant Hill and Christian Laettner and some of those fantastic Duke teams that were there, and just now watching this Duke team that, so much changeover, so much turnover in college athletics that, you're not going to ever see a 4-year player like Grant Hill. You know what I mean? Like a 4-year Christian Laettner, guys like that. But we saw it, and we saw it all the time. I mean, it was commonplace that would happen. But Kenny Blakeney, he's the head coach of Howard now. He made the tournament the previous 2 years, did not make the tournament this year, but was in the tournament the previous 2 years. So we'll talk with Kenny Blakeney coming up at noon, get his thoughts on this Duke team, what he sees, and if they are the favorites in his eyes. I'm going to guess they are. And they get set for a Houston team that's really, really good defensively. There is news in the NFL for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they have brought somebody back to their team. It is yet another, what would you call it? Reunion, I guess. Yeah, that's the word. That's what you would call it. It's another reunion. Veteran safety Mike Edwards is signing with the Chiefs on a 1-year deal. So he played with the Bills last year, was released by the Bills. I'm going to guess he ended up with the Saints. I have no idea if that's the case, but most Chiefs after the year end up with the Saints at some point. But now he's back with the Kansas City Chiefs on a 1-year deal. Played fine football for the Chiefs 2 years ago, was always around the football, it felt like, caused turnovers, did a good job in filling in for an injured Brian Cook. And so now they would have Jaden Hicks and Brian Cook. Bush is there on, practice squad, Mike Edwards and Shamari Connor. So you would have your 4 safeties there. So it would at least present them yet another positional group where you wouldn't think they would need to address in the draft this year. If it comes up and there's somebody there that shouldn't be there, like it was maybe last year with Jaden Hicks, and they felt like there's too good value right now just to pass it up, we're going to select this guy, then maybe that happens and they take somebody. But you're not looking at it and going, well, Deion Bush is your 4th safety right now with Brian Cook and Jaden Hicks and Shamari Connor. It also allows you then, if you need be, if there's injuries and Shamari Connor moves back to the slot, if a Christian Fulton or a Jalen Watson is hurt and McDuffie is playing on the perimeter more than playing in the slot, then maybe they do go back to Shamari Connor, and it allows you then to have that safety in Mike Edwards. And he knows the defense. Fine signing. Just continuing to add depth. 2 through 53 matters in the NFL. And guys are going to get injured. You need guys to step up and play. We'll see what he has left. The Bills didn't think he had much left, so they released him and moved on from having him there. So, we'll see what happens with that. So, it is Mike Edwards.
And you were close on where he went after Buffalo. It wasn't the NFC South, but it was back to Tampa. So he's been making some reunions on his last 2 signings there.
Yes.
So Tampa was the second half of the season, it looks like, and he only played 5 games. Yeah, he didn't really have a lot of time at Buffalo. Only 3 games there and 5 games in Tampa.
Well, right now, I don't think you can go wrong with guessing that a player that played with the Chiefs ended up with the Saints.
No. You were close. Still,
I know.
Might just be the NFC South.
that could be the case, yeah. But NFC South, but your first guess is Saints.
Right.
Where did he end up? I don't know, Saints.
Panthers.
Close. Panthers, Falcons, close, Bucks. You're right there. You were right there. Tweet comes in, and we were talking with Matt Lane at 11 o'clock about the draft, and if there's somebody there in the first round that would be maybe unexpected, a positional group. And he said running back, and we talked about running backs. And this tweet comes in, says, Chiefs can't get defenses on their heels because the running backs are too specialized, predictable, slow. It's not 2015 NFL anymore. The running back game or the running game is back. We need a back that brings multiple threats on 3 downs. Yes, a first-round pick. Help out our offensive line and quarterback. I mean, here's what I want them to draft, and this is going to sound so generic, but really good players. And if that is a running back that is a really good player and is a 3-down back and it does help the offense as a weapon, then yeah, then go that route. It just depends on who it is, and you better not be wrong. But there are positional values, and in a draft this deep at running back, I'd be surprised if they went that route, and I would prefer them go somewhere else. I'd prefer them go the trenches. Work the trenches in the first round, maybe even second round. And if the draft is as deep this year with the running back, then maybe you go that route in the third round. No, you're not going to get the top 4 running backs in the draft this year. But if you get the 7th running back in the draft this year, would that have been the 3rd or 4th running back in the draft last year or the year before, to where you're going, wow, you got the 3rd best running back in the 4th round? Well, teams that needed running back last year may have taken that guy in the 2nd round or the 3rd round. Who knows? And I know 2nd round draft pick was where the first running back went. I get that because it wasn't a great running back draft. And a lot of teams felt like last year, maybe we wait till next year. Could be a better running back draft, and that's what it is. I'd be surprised if they didn't grab somebody. I'd be good either way. If they drafted an all-around back and said this is going to be a guy that's a 3-down back, okay, great. You need somebody to take over for Isaiah Pacheco anyway. But, man, they need some juice in the backfield. They need something that they don't feel like this Chiefs team, oddly enough, when you've got Xavier Worthy and McCole Hardman out there, when you have DeAndre Hopkins and you have Travis Kelce and you have Hunt and Pacheco, they feel kind of slow. And this Chiefs team with Patrick Mahomes has never felt slow. And that's what it looked like at times last year. They've got one guy that isn't slow, but they need to add to that some playmakers, some home run hitters. We'll take a timeout. Kenny Blakeney coming up next. All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. We're hanging out in San Antonio. The Final Four coming up on Saturday right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Let's talk some college basketball as the head coach of Howard joins us, Kenny Blakeney, here in the zone. Coach, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Jason. How you doing, man?
I am doing just fine. There's a lot of things I want to talk to you about when it comes to your career and history as a player and everything. But for you, I mean, you get kind of used to being in the tournament the last couple of years. I know not the season you guys had, but it's still a pretty successful run for you guys at Howard.
Absolutely. Being here and being in and around this energy and excitement of the Final Four, man, it makes me think that I have to go back and do a better job next year.
Is that right? I mean, you guys have done a pretty good job the last couple of years. Like, you've seen your name pop up on the TV screen. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but I miss this.
I know. I know. Is it tough, like, for somebody like yourself that, you know, you spend the previous 2 years in the NCAA tournament to this go around, it's like, you know, missing out?
There's a magic with March, man, that is so special, right? And to be a part of it, to hear your name called, to have an opportunity to play and be on whatever network that you're on during this time it's, you know, hearing the music, right? Hearing that intro music. Dun, 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 dun.
Yes.
Like, come on, man. What's better than that?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. And then to hear, you know, the one shining moment and to have these teams have their, you know, video, like every national championship, it's like, well, that was the UConn one shining moment, or that was the Louisville or the Kentucky or the Kansas one shining moment, the Duke one shining moment, which is pretty awesome. And I think every single fan of teams that played in the tournament are watching it just to see if their team made this 2.5-minute video montage.
There's no doubt about it, man. What a special video, and it's been part of the history and the culture and the fibers of March Madness, man. It's, you know, it's really, really special.
You're, I mean, coming from being a player at Duke and such a successful team that you were on, along the way, when does somebody figure out that, you know what, I want to stay around the game and maybe coaching is in the future? It's something I want to do. I want to do with these college kids what Coach K and that coaching staff did for me. Like, when does that happen for a guy like yourself?
Typically when they tell you that you're not a good player anymore.
That makes sense. It's when they said, when do you want to do radio? When I found out I wasn't going to play any sport in high school. So I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think, you know, playing at DeMatha Catholic High School for Coach Morgan Wooten, playing for Coach K, I was trending in that way but didn't know it. Being around two of the best coaches that ever do it, both are in the Naismith Hall of Fame. Mike Bray told me, he was like, look, you'll be a natural. And I jumped in with, you know, 2 feet and started out. And, you know, today it's like, you know, freaking a head coach at Howard University.
Do you feel like every once in a while, do you have, like, when you're coaching, are there lessons or things that you say and you're like, oh, wait, that was Coach K, you know? Absolutely.
And then having a Dookie on my staff and Tyler Thornton, there's a lot of eerie similarities with some of the things that we talk about or we do, and it's kind of neat because, you know, it's kind of paying homage to Coach K, right?
Yeah.
And you know, Coach Wooten, guys that we've played for, guys we've coached with, some of those things are like you take a little bit of it from each and every place that you go to.
I'm assuming that when you're playing, you don't realize some of those things are being instilled in you on a daily basis until you get out and get away from it. It's like, you know, when you grow up, you're like, oh, wait, my parents were right. Yeah. You know, but as a child, it's like, my parents weren't. No, I know more than you. And I'm not saying you maybe thought that with Coach K, but as you get older in a way, like, oh, that's what that was for.
No, every lesson that he ever gave us, it's like today, they're so like needed and they're so important, they're so valid, right? And then you're just kind of like, but you trusted him, right? That's why we went to Duke. We went to Duke because we believed in Coach K. We trusted him. But those life lessons that we've learned, they still are, you know, very much relevant today.
Is there a particular thing that sticks out from a life lesson from Coach K or a coaching part that you've sort of taken along with you and you've incorporated in your head coaching career?
Well, Coach K is one of the most competitive, like, you know, guys I've ever been around. And a lot of people don't see that part of him because when the camera's on him, he's always like calm and his demeanor is in a way. But, you know,
I like how you even use the hand gesture that Coach K would use.
See, exactly. It's like, so it's all those little things you pick up on. It's, you know, but he's just a remarkable guy and he's been such a good friend since I've been a head coach. Always checking in, know what we're playing and know who we're playing, know how we're doing. Like, he's been awesome.
Is it is it one of those things where he's coaching, he's doing those things, but is he a phone call away to say, hey Kay, hey Mike, what do you think of this? Can I pick your brain real quick?
He's been such an incredible mentor, friend, and just a guy that's there for us. We gave him a championship ring our first championship season. And, just to show him that we're grateful and appreciative of everything he's done for us and, looking out after us. He knows our schedule. He'll send a text and, good luck against, whoever you're playing or, sometimes give us some advice. So I'm just very lucky and fortunate to have, Coach in our corner.
You could have gone in. Kenny Blakeney's our guest, former Duke Blue Devil, now head coach at Howard. You could have gone anywhere in the country that you wanted to, and the best player in Maryland could have gone to Maryland and stayed in the ACC. But as that recruiting process was going on, were you close to going elsewhere? And how did you ultimately decide on the team that had gone to 4 straight Final Fours?
It was the reason I went. I wanted to be a part of something that was bigger than me. And winning championships was really important. I won championships in high school, won championships as a little leaguer, won championships my whole life. And it was like, what team is going to give us or give me the best opportunity, I think, to get a quality education but also win a national championship? So my decision on Duke was purely on Coach K, getting a great education and winning a national championship.
Were you close to going somewhere else, or was it like in high school? Because your high school career, the whole time, Duke was in the Final Four all 4 of those years. So was it one of those to where, you know what, I'm going to be a Duke Blue Devil when I play college ball?
Well, I mean, it was close to Georgetown. I was close to Maryland. I was close. Coach John Chaney was a dear friend. Was very close to going to Temple.
Wow.
UVA, Notre Dame, UCLA. There were tons, but growing up, I was a little bit of a Duke fan. I was a Maryland fan because of Len Bias, but I was a Duke fan because of Johnny Dawkins, and to see that success, that was sustainable year in and year out. I knew that they were just so close to getting over the hump to win that championship.
Kenny Blakeney's our guest. We're in Kansas City, and so one of the themes that we've seen over the last few years is that free agents or players that are traded or they end up with the Chiefs in the offseason or midseason. And one of the things they say is, boy, it's nice to show up to a team that I don't have to be the leader, or the culture is already set, or they've got these guys that you walk in and you sort of know what they're about immediately. And not to say anything bad about the previous team, but you show up here and it's a different feel. When you get to Duke as a freshman, obviously you don't know how to compare that to other colleges, but you've got a senior Leitner and a junior Hurley and a sophomore Grant Hill. You've got these guys that are already there. When you show up, is there a level of, I'm sorry, freshman, but this is how it's done, or go somewhere else?
No, absolutely. That is the culture. You get in the back of the line and you watch, and you kind of figure it out. But you understand, because it's different. Being a head coach, when I got to Howard, I thought that everyone understood culture, because I'd been in places where the culture was already set.
Interesting.
So you just get back in line and you kind of follow the culture. But having to build a culture at Howard, because I was so spoiled at Duke and DeMatha, you had to create it. So, at Duke, you understand, like, hey, look, you got leaders here. You follow your leader. Ultimate leader is Coach K, but the players have a great input on what's going on. And you kind of, work your tail off to try to have an opportunity to, and grow and develop to become a better player and a better leader the next year.
When you first got there, were the expectations set by the coaching staff, or was it your peers, the players, of you were doing what you needed to do to make sure that you didn't let them down?
Yeah, it's all about the players.
Yeah.
Coach K has the standards, but the players carry everything out. And that locker room is, you have to fall in line.
Yeah.
It's incredible because, we were considered probably the Cosby kids, right? You look at the, clean-cut kids, Grant Hill and Christian Leitner and Bobby Hurley, but under all of that, you had some incredible competitors. So every day in practice, we went after one another. And then in the locker room, we would go after one another as well, with some type of humor, or I dunked on you, or whatever it was that happened in practice. But the competition part of it never stopped.
Kenny Blakeney is our guest, head coach at Howard, and played at Duke, won a national championship, played for a national championship as well. How long does it take to instill culture then? How long does it take to instill that? You get to Howard and rough couple of years getting going, but then, as I said, 4th year, 5th year, you're in the NCAA tournament. How long does it take, and how do you How do you find that? How do you identify that to know that this is going to be a culture-building player or whatever type of lesson?
Yeah, we brought in a sports psychologist, Dr. Joe Carr, and he works with the University of Missouri. So, very familiar in that area.
Yeah.
He's done an incredible job, and he, gave us basically the DNA. We call it energy-generating behaviors, and we have 18 of them, and there are things that are required of you that don't, matter if you score points or not. Like, if you can bring these 18 things every day, that you're going to have a chance to be successful and have a chance to win. So we really stick to that culture of our energy-generating behaviors, and it's been something that has worked wonders for us.
Visiting with Kenny Blakeney, what do you think of this Duke team that they get ready for Houston on Saturday night? They got some stud freshmen, they got some older guys as well, but they are the most inexperienced team in the tournament in the Final Four, yet they're the favorites here this weekend in San Antonio. What do you think? What do you see when you watch this Duke team play?
I see them being very similar to the teams we played that we were part of in the early 90s. They're long. They really defend. They create a lot of offense from their defense. They share the ball. They're very connected. I think that they've been, outside of them and Auburn, the two best teams all year. And hopefully I can see them close it out on Monday.
The defensive part, I think, is interesting because we talk about, people will talk about how good Houston is defensively, and they are. They absolutely are.
They're scary.
Really good defensive team. Duke is as well, and the one thing that I think stood out in the Sweet 16 to the Elite Eight in just that region, that Alabama breaks the record and Loyola Marymount's BYU in that Sweet 16 game, and then they go up against Duke and they struggle. And I think simplistically you can go, well, that happens sometimes. You have a hot night, a couple nights later, you're not hitting it. But I do think there's a difference when 6'8" is closing out as opposed to 6'3" or 6'4". And that's what I see in the difference of Duke is the length athleticism on this team.
Makes a huge difference. I've seen it in our teams that we've had at Howard. When we've had taller, bigger defensive players, we've been able to switch more. We've been able to be a little bit more dynamic defensively. And when I look at this Duke team, their length. I mean, Cooper is competitive.
Yeah.
Right? He's 6'9". He's probably the most competitive kid in college basketball right now. And he gets after it on both ends. So when you see him, you see the 7-footer who changes everything around the basket. You see all these, Con Knipple, what a competitor he is. Like Proctor, those guys they're 6'6" to 7'2", interchangeable parts. They really keep guys in front. Their length on contesting shots is incredible, but they're also able to convert offense from defense, which is really important because now you're able to steal possessions, right? You can change a 2 or 3 point possession game and make that a 5 to 6 point game. So it's it's one of those things in watching them. It's like, can their offense do a good job against Houston's defense? Because Houston is tough.
I do want, I talked about a couple of days ago, that I think the first 5 minutes are going to be pretty important. That if Duke looks fine in the first 5 minutes, and looking fine is a relative term compared to what Houston makes teams look like, but if they look fine in the first 5 or 6 minutes, then I feel really good about Duke, because one of the things I've seen from Houston is that teams that haven't played them this year, the first media timeout, second media timeout, there's kind of a shock of like, oh, this is okay. I can't drive there. All right, they've shut that off. Okay, they're pretty physical. All right, that's that guy's tougher than that's not in practice, right? And I think that's what happened to Tennessee. And Tennessee's a pretty tough team. And the first 5 minutes are like, well, wait, this is a little bit different from what we've seen. I think those first 5 minutes are going to be interesting for Duke. And if they respond to that, then I think that's great news for Duke in the game. But Houston can shock you right out of the gates with how they play.
Oh, that's going to be like Hearns Hagler the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's going to be a battle, right? And I think that's going to be great. That's what this game should be about, right? To have a chance to earn your way to play in a championship game. Like, Houston scares me. Their physicality. I think Kelvin Sampson is one of the best coaches in the country. And then defensively, the way that they defend ball screens, the way that they can keep guys in front, I think the way that they can physically just beat you up, physically and mentally, is going to be a challenge for Duke.
Yeah. Kenny Blakeney is our guest. Who do you think wins it this weekend?
Do I have to answer that one?
I already wrote down Duke, so I'm going to assume that's what you're going with.
I am going with the Duke Blue Devils.
I figured as much, yes. Duke wins it this week, and we'll see. Although in the office pool, and we do a player pool where we draft players as well, if Florida beats Duke, then I pretty much win both of them. So I will be I hope you're wrong. For your sake, hey, that's awesome if you're right. For my sake and my pocketbook, I hope you're wrong.
I understand. I got Florida there as well. Florida Duke on Monday night, and Duke cut down the nets.
Could be a fantastic one. This is going to be a fun Final Four. Kenny Blakeney, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Head coach there at Howard and played with those fantastic Duke teams. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. More Zone next. For themselves in the One Shining Moment song and winning national championships. And we'll see what happens on Monday night. But we are here in San Antonio at the Final Four. And joining us now is the play-by-play voice of the San Antonio Spurs, Bill Schoening, here in the Zone. Bill, how are you, sir?
Very good. We just got off a road trip against the Denver Nuggets last night. So we've been on a road, and late in the season, we're not going to make the playoffs this year. We've had a couple key injuries.
Yeah.
So because of that, we're kind of toward the end and get ready for the offseason. But that's okay. Yeah. We're so happy you guys are here, though, because it's always good to have some folks in town, especially with a great event like the Final Four.
It's my favorite Final Four city is San Antonio. I would love for them to be in the rotation more often. I know it's been, 6 years? 2018 was the last time. Absolutely love it. Favorite one. Anytime it's San Antonio, I'm like, yes. Thank you at San Antonio this year.
Yeah, it's been so much fun to be part of the Spurs history, and then also the way that the Alamo Dome has become the Final Four location. There's also a college here named UTSA, and they play their home football games now in the Alamo Dome. So it's good to see the building being put to use after the Spurs left 25 years ago.
No doubt, yes. Yeah. You mentioned that not making the playoffs this year. How much of a shock to the system was it when you get the news on Victor that out of nowhere it's like, hold on, what?
Yeah, a deep vein thrombosis. I had to look it up. Yeah. I never heard of it, and it's basically blood clots, and it was in his shoulder, and they don't want to take any chances with this young guy, so they shut him down for the final 30 games of the season, and we acquired De'Aaron Fox from Sacramento during the season, and he was really looking good, except he had a busted pinky finger, and he really needed surgery on that, so they shut him down early as well. So we've been up against it here very short-handed for the last few weeks, but you do what you do. Last night we beat the Denver Nuggets, but they rested 5 guys because they had played a double overtime game, a great game against Minneapolis, against Minnesota the night before, where Jokic had that 61-point triple-double. It's been fun to watch these international guys. That's one thing that's really changed in the league since I've come in 24 years ago, is just watching really the dominance of some of these European players.
Yeah, the evolution is fantastic. I mean, we saw the Dream Team in the 90s and what they were able to do, and then really just the explosion of international basketball that's now here in the NBA.
The Dream Team had a lot to do with that. Yeah. PJ Carlissimo is a very good friend of mine, lives in Seattle now. Still works for Westwood One, as a matter of fact, doing some color
analysis. Probably be here tomorrow.
Yeah, and you won't have to worry about killing a segment if you get him on. You can just get him, ask him about Italian food. He'll do a whole segment.
I'll just say, PJ, how are you? PJ, we have to let you go. Appreciate you joining us.
Exactly,
that's my job.
Yeah. So you get the gist of that, right?
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, it's been crazy just to see those and what Victor has done and winning the lottery and just like it's like. The Spurs, they see these generational talents and big men come along, and it's like, well, they're going to draft them. You get David Robinson, you get Tim Duncan, and, of course, you get Victor.
Well, it just kind of worked out that way. And now we're really excited about the next rookie of the year. We think that Steph Castle may very well get it, the rookie from UConn, who's only 20 years of age. He's been gaining confidence throughout the course of the year. He's a very good, willing defender. You don't see a lot of guys at the age of 20 come in the league and really want to be good defenders. He really works hard at that end of the floor, and he's improving his offensive game. He's like a sponge. He absorbs everything the coaches give him. So I'm real optimistic about the future of this program with so many good young players.
Yeah. Bill Schoening is our guest. He's the play-by-play voice of the San Antonio Spurs. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was and is like we cover this Chiefs team a lot, obviously, here in Kansas City, and it's been this dynastic run since 2018, making the AFC Championship game every single year, going to the 5 Super Bowls and winning 3 of them, and being a part of a dynasty and what that's like. And I'm curious from your standpoint of being a part of a San Antonio Spurs dynasty that every year, like you would think that it could collapse on itself because the expectation in San Antonio was NBA Finals or bust. And the expectation in Kansas City is, well, go to the Super Bowl because that's what you're there to do. And it's like it's so unreasonable, yet they still meet expectations. It's unreal.
I think when you see consistency and excellency in sports, you have a culture. Andy Reid has built a culture, clearly, in Kansas City that's about winning, about togetherness. It seems like those guys have each other's back. And Greg Popovich did the same thing with San Antonio. And it's great to have a generational player like Patrick Mahomes or Tim Duncan to kind of build everything around and to make sure that that player is selfless and is willing to be coached and is willing to maybe make a few sacrifices to make sure he's got the pieces around him to continue that excellence. And that's very, very difficult to do in today's culture, as you know. Yeah. But if you have that kind of a winning attitude and culture like Andy Reid does in Kansas City, like Greg Popovich did for years here in San Antonio, I think that that's the foundation in which you build upon.
So Popovich puts the foundation in place, but then Duncan, Manu, Tony, how much is, because we look at Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Chris Jones on the defensive side, how much then does Popovich really have to do other than guys coming in and joining what is an expected culture with those guys that have been there, done that, and they can tap their rings on the table and say, okay, young fella, you don't need to listen to me. I've got these rings here.
I remember a famous quote from Pop during all of that. He says, all I did was I didn't get in the way. So I think it probably involved a little bit more than just not getting in the way. But to put those pieces together, R.C. Buford was the general manager during that period of time. And there's just certain pieces that fit. Certain programs have that guy that might not fit another program. Bruce Bowen, example. Bruce Bowen's number 12 hangs in the rafters at the arena where we play, the Frost Bank Center. He averaged 6 points a game. But for 8 years, he was a first team or second team all defense. He gave Kobe Bryant all that he wanted and more. Not that Kobe didn't get his against Bruce, but he had to work a little bit harder to get his. And the team franchise values defense to the point where they would hang up the jersey of a guy that averaged 6 points a game.
Did you ever feel like the country turned against you? in the Spurs and the dynasty? Because it feels like the Spurs are one of the few dynasties that people continue to root for, which is odd.
Klay Thompson's dad, Michael Thompson, is the longtime analyst for Lakers radio. Yeah. And we were pretty consistent there for a long, long time. And he came up to me one time after a pregame interview, and he says, you know what the Spurs are like? They're like that cockroach in the kitchen. And no matter how many times you stomp it or you try to trap it, it keeps coming back. It just keeps coming back. You guys are the cockroach in the kitchen.
Yeah, but you don't like cockroaches. People like the Spurs and continue
Not
to
if you're with the Lakers, you did.
That's a good point, yes, because we've seen in Kansas City, we've seen it turn so fast from people going, oh, this Patrick Mahomes is so cool. Oh, this Chiefs team, this is a fun team, to now it's anybody but the Chiefs. All they do is cheat. They get all the calls.
Well, that's part of culture, right?
Yeah,
I mean, part of nature, right? I mean, you get tired of things, It's like, okay, they were great for a while, but let's see something else. Let's do something else. It's like back in the 60s, you had a choice between the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And, of course, the Beatles were popular, but they were doing I Want to Hold Your Hand. At the same time, the Rolling Stones were doing Let's Spend the Night Together. So it's like it's a good, bad thing kind of working right there, right? In the mid-60s.
Yes, and it was a great Super Bowl they played. It was fantastic. Game 7, it went all the way to 7.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the final.
How did I get music into the middle of that?
I loved it,
sorry about that.
Because you're a music guy, too.
I am, too. Yeah, well, I live in Austin, so that's part of it. Yeah, so. And you live in Kansas City. Goodness,
yes,
great music city there.
For sure. And you were telling me about your relationship with Bob Kendrick at the Negro Leagues Museum.
Yeah. Bob is a good guy. I've been to the Negro League Museum several times way back in the day when Kemper Arena was hosting the Big 12 tournament. That was the voice of the Texas Longhorns back then. So I love that museum, and I think it's very, very important. I wish more people would take time to go see that and really see those stories and hear those stories about those guys that love baseball so much that they did a lot just to go out there and play.
I'm not sure there's a better storyteller in America than Bob Kendrick.
He's awesome, and he learned from the best too.
Yes, Buck O'Neil. I mean,
yes, he did.
If there was ever anybody to carry the reins of Buck O'Neil and those stories that Buck was able to tell, and for somebody to be the sponge and then be able to retell them in a way Buck did, I think they found the one person in the world that could do that.
For years, I did what you do. I hosted a show in Austin, and I got to interview Buck a couple of times, and it was just a joy. Just basically, you just open up the mic and let him go, right?
So cool.
And just not get in the way.
Yeah, one of my earliest memories of working in this business was even as an intern. I was out at Kauffman Stadium, and it was when Buck was still with us, obviously, and he was there. And there are rules when you're in the media about autographs and things like that. And so I've never done that. But that one time, I went and snuck over a batting practice ball and a pin, and I walked up to Buck O'Neil to get at that point, I'm like, I don't care. Like, this is, to me, it was different with that, and he graciously signed the ball.
Gracious is the word.
Yes.
He was a gracious man.
And so, it's one of the my main things in the man cave is that Buck O'Neil ball.
There you go. I mean, you should be proud of it, too.
I did not care if I got in trouble or not. Like, you know what?
It was
Kick
worth
me
it.
out. That's fine.
That's right,
it's absolutely worth it. What's the future for Pop?
I don't know. Steve Kerr just visited with me the other day and said that he looked good and was feeling pretty good. So, it's been out that he had a minor stroke in early November. Has not been with the team since, but I think he stays in touch with everybody. I know he wants to come back. He's been working very hard to rehab, but they really honestly let us know an awful lot. They don't give us the play-by-play, a daily update on how he's going. But, he's in his mid-70s, but he's always been a guy that's stayed in great shape. He's always been mentally sharp. So I wouldn't discount him coming back. I wouldn't doubt him for a second.
I was going to say, do you think he has more years left in him as a coach?
We'll see. It's funny. 2 years ago, I think I saw him out there doing sliding drills with one of the rookies. I'm like, okay, Pop. So, I mean, he has a passion for coaching. He has a passion for teaching. He's been part of this organization for a long, long time. I think he feels a certain responsibility to the organization. So it doesn't surprise me that he wants to come back because, a lot of guys in their mid-70s that have had this kind of success. He's the all-time winningest coach, and he's got a gold medal, for goodness sake. He's got everything you'd need, but he wants to keep going. So if he wants to, more power to him.
Bill Schoening is our guest. Have people talked about if Pop were to walk away, what they would want in a coach?
I've heard some fans talk about it, but I think from the organization standpoint, he's still in charge and he's still the guy. They're going to, give him every opportunity to come back and then, address whatever happens after that, beyond that.
I bring it up because it seems like every few years, if Popovich is going to retire or if he's not going to coach anymore, Bill Self's name comes up because of his relationship with R.C. Buford. And it came up again, sort of just like, hey, he was thinking about going to Oklahoma State. Well, if Pop's out, there's their relationship in San Antonio. Bill Self, it sort of felt like he's always in his career wanted to coach in the NBA. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, it's interesting, though, with the Spurs, to be honest with you. And Bill Self probably would be one of those guys that name would be at the top or close to it.
Yeah.
But there would be a lot of names because Pop has so many guys that he's basically the head of the Pop coaching tree. And there are a lot of coaches, former players, former coaches that worked under him that are head coaches and assistant coaches around the league, also in college, in the G League. I mean, there's guys everywhere. So if that job were to ever come open, there would be a lot of guys interested.
Yes, and a chance to coach Victor would bring that.
And that's one of the things about free agency, too, is that I think there are a lot of players now that want to play with Victor. So that's, even though San Antonio might not be number one on the guest list as far as, wanting to go free agent destination, I think people want to play with Victor Wembanyama, so that makes San Antonio a little more attractive.
I mean, Tom Izzo talked about it when he was offered the Cleveland Cavaliers job, and it was like, well, I don't really want to coach in the NBA. But if LeBron James is asking if you're going to coach him, you listen.
Sure, absolutely.
You listen. So I'm not saying he's LeBron, but he is the premier young player right now that people feel like could be incredibly special in Victor Wembanyama. Although Bill Self has said that he's not going to work for R.C. Buford. So
it's been fun to watch Victor, though, in his development, and he's just scratching the surface right now. So keep an eye on this young guy. Once he gets a little bigger and stronger, he was averaging 24.5 points, 11 rebounds, leading the league with 4 blocks, and he just turned 21, and he's been playing hurt. So we're looking forward to seeing his future.
Bill Schoening, play-by-play of the San Antonio Spurs. Thank you so much for stopping by. Really
Great
appreciate it.
Great to be with you, yeah. And I can't wait to get back to Kansas City. I got to get to go listen to some blues and some jazz and get some barbecue.
100%. Yeah, that is absolutely right. Bill Schoening, the play-by-play voice of the San Antonio Spurs. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. More Zone right after this. 913-912-4810. Our coverage presented by Easton Roofing and National VA Loans. Text at 913-912-4810 says, great interview with Porter Moser. Thanks for being on site at the Final Four. Just wish Mizzou could join you sometime. I don't know that that's going to happen. Dylan, what are the odds in the near future that'll happen?
I did not send that text either, so that was not me.
Why would you send that text, Dylan? That seems unnecessary.
It's just unnecessary.
Did Jake Gutierrez send that text?
It might
Come on,
be
Jake. Come on, you're friends with SSJ. Come on, you know how much it hurts.
I think, listen, I want Mizzou and K-State to experience a Final Four. It's so much fun, and I've done it so many times. It's just like so boring.
That was pretty good. I was wondering where you were going with that. Well done. It was a nice setup. I appreciate that.
But for real,
though,
I actually do. Like, I have cousins.
Played.
I have friends that are Mizzou and K-State fans. So, like, every Elite Eight appearance you guys get, every, 2 or higher seed you guys get, I am – I got a little rooting interest. I'm being serious. I do enjoy that when the locals are all making deep tournament runs. Like, when it was Marquise Noel and oh my God, I can't remember. It was so much fun. I can't remember the name of the guy, but it was awesome watching
Johnson,
those.
Yeah, with K-State.
Yeah, that was an awesome tournament run to watch. So
yeah, I do appreciate when you said all the Elite Eights and everything. All 4 of them, all 4 Elite Eights.
It's like I'm trying to actually be genuine, and it sounds like
I know.
No, I'm serious.
I get it.
I know what you say because it does sound like I'm not being it. So.
Yeah,
no,
and I'm being self-deprecating and gallows humor, and if you don't laugh, you'll cry, sort of thing.
There you go.
We are scheduled to talk to Dennis Gates either today in the show or tomorrow. We don't know when he's going to be here. If he's going to be here today or tomorrow. But when Dennis Gates is here, we'll talk with him. We're hoping to catch up with Jerome Tang as well. We'll see about Bill Self. It's really whoever is here on Radio Row that we get a chance to talk to. And a number of players that are in the NABC All-Star game and things like that. Tamar Bates is in that game, so hoping we'll get a chance to talk to Tamar Bates. Caleb Grill's in the game. So we'll see about that as well. 913-912-4810 is the text line. Let's hear from Q from yesterday afternoon's loss to the Milwaukee Brewers, a pitching duel. They lose 3-2 in extra innings. Here's what Matt Quatrero had to say.
You lose. It doesn't matter how you lose. We knew he was going to bunt. That's why we didn't intentionally walk Ortiz. It's hard to defend that. If you execute it, there's nothing you can do. And especially that bunt. It was perfectly on the line, in the dirt. Nobody could have done anything about it. We were talking more about not defending the steal and where we wanted the infielders and where we wanted Sally and the pitch execution more than anything. Yeah, well, we figured it would be low scoring. We know how good Peralta is. We know how good Cole is, and it certainly was. Cole, a bunch of strikeouts, I don't know, 9 or 10 strikeouts. The pitch count got up there a little more elevated than we would have liked, and Peralta was extremely efficient. So our bullpen picked up 5+ innings there. So, there was no margin for error. Yeah, we're disappointed we lost. We're not disappointed in our offense or our defense. A team loss, so we're disappointed in the loss overall.
So that's Matt Quatrero from yesterday. And look, the second he turned around to bunt, I looked, the game's over. Even if they're running a safety squeeze, that just has to be a generic bunt, and you're going to score that run. But it's unfortunate sort of being in that situation. And I know that he said not disappointed with the offense, but the offense has been disappointing this year. Jonathan India, if you'd have told anybody what Jonathan India's start was going to be to the season, you'd be pretty pumped about and Michael Garcia's start was going to be. You talk about the number 1 hitter and a guy who's at the bottom of the lineup. Look at what those two guys are going to do in the first 6 games. Royals are going to win a lot of games, and they're going to score a lot of runs. And if they don't win, then there's something going on with the pitching staff and the rotation, whatever may have happened there, bad outings. But instead, we're talking about 5 of the 6 games where the offense has just really struggled. And that is with a Jonathan India and a Michael Garcia being guys that are having really good starts to the season. And a big reason is that, 2-3-4 is batting .209 and getting on base at under 300. And slugging .370, when 2-3-4 in your lineup in only 6 games, mind you. I think everybody here is a little thirsty from all the talking, so small sample size. Everybody can take a drink now. But an OPSing of 657, it's tough to score runs because the bottom part of your lineup is not expected to do the work. It's not expected to do the damage. And those numbers, unfortunately, are happening, and those 6 extra base hits, but those numbers are happening with Jonathan India doing a really good job of getting on base and doing his job. Now, yesterday, the hit, the double that he had, but 1 through 4 yesterday was 1 for 17. Like, you're not going to score a lot of runs that way. You're going to be a team that's going to be limited. You're going to have your pitching staff and your bullpen throw zeros up there, and any crooked number is probably going to get you beat because you weren't posting any crooked numbers. You were putting zeros on the board a whole lot. And so, look, once the bunt was laid down, game was over. You were hoping that maybe you could turn 2 at that point, but really, I mean, they had a number of opportunities the night before in turning 2, and it really didn't happen. I start off with the offense and talking about that because I don't put this on the pitching staff. I don't think this is a pitching staff problem and a bullpen problem from what took place. In fact, Carlos Estevez, what he did getting out of that jam was absolute brilliant work. The BS balk call, the BSBC, the BS balk call that was called, that puts guys at second and third, and they are a fly ball away from winning the game, and having the infield in. Making the play, making the pitch that it was, a ball that was hit, but it wasn't a rocket into right center. It was somewhat of a line drive, but it also wasn't a line drive that was going to take Michael Garcia's head off. He was able to catch it. And getting the strikeouts. It was awesome work by Estevez. If I had a complaint in the game, and again, I start off with the fact that I don't think the pitching staff was the issue, but I would have liked to see Lucas Erceg stay in the game a little bit longer. He came in the 7th inning, or the 6th inning, I should say. No, it was the 7th because Zerpa started this because Hunter Harvey had the 6th inning. And then Zerpa started the 7th and got through a third of an inning, and Erceg came in and bailed him out and got the 2/3 of an inning. Yeah, Zerpa, you would like to see him do a lot better than what he's been doing right now, or just somewhat better even would be nice incremental improvement. But Erceg comes out there, gets 2 outs, gets a strikeout, throws 9 pitches. 9 pitches. If he's not, he's your second best reliever. And he throws 9 pitches. And then you move on to the 8th inning at that point, and you bring in Schreiber. Well, you could stay with Erceg there. And I know the up-downs, they're not a big fan of those. But Erceg has had a number of starts or games and appearances where he went more than 1 inning last year. He had some 4 or 5 out saves that he had to get last year. And early on in the season, sure, you don't want to overwork somebody, but he didn't have a 25-pitch inning and then they sat him. He went out there, threw 9 pitches, and you take him out of the game, and you went and got John Schreiber. So you go, okay, well, yeah, but John Schreiber did his job. He got the game from the 8th inning without allowing a run. He did his job. Okay, great, yes. Then you went with Daniel Lynch in the 9th. Lynch did his job. Estevez, unfortunately, the run came around and scored. Not earned, obviously, but the run came around and scored, and they tied the game. But he got out of that. And then you go to Sam Long. And here's my point. I'm not blaming Sam Long for the loss, but are the Royals playing another inning if Schreiber is pitching that, or if Daniel Lynch is pitching that inning? And that's the point of Erceg throwing 9 pitches in a tie game and coming out, because then you're going to Schreiber. So now Erceg is done. Schreiber for an inning. Daniel Lynch in there. Now Schreiber is done. So you've used Zerpa, you've used Erceg, you've used Harvey, you used Schreiber, and you've used Daniel Lynch to get 3 innings or 4 innings, the 6th through the 9th. You use those guys to get through 4 innings in a tie game. And that's what happens when you get then into the 11th, and Sam Long's the guy there. He needs to be better, certainly. I didn't think he was terrible in the game when he gave up the hit. Walked the guy. But the hit was the bunt. He got the ground ball out if there wasn't a man already at second, but that's the deal. That's how you play the game in extras. But that move to Schreiber and taking Erceg out had a residual effect on the rest of the game and moves that were made. You bring in Schreiber. You bring in Lynch. You bring in Estevez, and you don't want to use Estevez for an extra inning. Okay, fine, because he had his 27 pitches were high leverage. They were stress pitches for Estevez. So I get it. Not against that. What I'm against is not having Schreiber available or Lynch available in that spot because you used him earlier because Urseg pitched 9 innings or 9 pitches. Like, we can look at it and go, well, it's not. I mean, it's one game. They got 156 more of these things. All right, there's only 6 games in. And granted, that is true. But there's a date last year that we talked about through the offseason or in the playoffs. And in fact, I believe it was J.J. Piccolo that talked about it before the season started. Might have been John Sherman. Can't remember who it was that discussed it or talked about it. But when we look back on the season last year, there was a game that was played on June 7th. June 7th. Now, Milwaukee's in the National League, so tiebreaker is not going to matter, okay? I get that. But on June 7th last year, the Royals found themselves down 8-0 in a game against the Mariners. And they came back and won that game. And they won the tiebreaker over the Mariners, and they made the playoffs. And if they lose that game, they miss the playoffs. Now, there's a lot that happened over the course of the year, but it's kind of difficult for people to point that out and go, man, how big was that 8-run comeback against the Mariners? Because the Royals make the playoffs and the Mariners don't. So now you're, playing in the wild card against Baltimore, and you win that one. Then you get a home playoff game. How great that season was. That added cherry on top of the playoffs, not just being competitive, but cherry on top of getting there because you were down 8-0 and you made some crazy comeback. So you're saying that game where you found a way to win mattered. That one game. We can dismiss it and say, well, it's 1 of 162. It's 1 of 162. There's 156 more. Right. But you can't let a lot of these things get away. And decisions that are made along the way can help you win or lose a game. Maybe if he goes with Urseg the next inning, Urseg gets hit around and they lose the game. Maybe he goes with Urseg, he's fine, and Schreiber's in there and he's fine, and Daniel Lynch comes in the 11th and they lose the game. Maybe those things still happen, but the process of the whole thing is what I would like to see rather than just simply the results of it. Baseball's, you can make the right decisions and they don't work out. They scored a run in an inning where Kyle Isbell led off and swung at a ball in the dirt for strike 3 with Michael Garcia sitting on the bench. Like, are we trying to win the game? Are we managing that way, or are you sort of managing to see if Kyle Isbell can break out of a slump? You're in the 9th inning, and, you'd like to see, some guys that are up there that maybe can do some damage or get things started, and Kyle Isbell's leading off. They get a run the next inning with Michael Massey, coming through in that single. But in the 9th inning, the tie game, you've got Kyle Isbell out there. Again, with Michael Garcia. I don't understand the thought process with that because Michael Garcia then enters the game in the 10th inning by running for Michael Massey. So you've inserted him in the game, but he doesn't get an at-bat. Oh, he's a good base runner. Granted, he got caught stealing. He didn't get caught stealing very often last year. So he's a good base runner, so you bring him in for Michael Massey to steal a base. It didn't happen. He got caught, and then Hunter Renfroe struck out. That's not surprising. The surprising part was Garcia getting caught. But Kyle Isbell leading off the 9th inning, I have real questions about that. Like, it's the process of the whole thing. It's not just one particular game that we can talk about. And it's only one game, it's a loss. They lost 3-2. Right, and if we're talking about the offense being more of an issue than the pitching staff, well, Garcia not being in the game as being one of your better hitters, maybe have him bat instead of Isbell that's batting 133 and was 0 for 2 with a strikeout at that point. Garcia's batting .350 and didn't take it at bat. But Kyle Isbell got in there. I don't know, righty-lefty. You know, that whole fun thing that it's got to be righty-lefty matchups. You don't take out a left-handed hitter against a right-handed pitcher and put it in a right-handed hitter. That's just absurd. You would never do that. Well, I don't know. I'd like to see you take out a guy who's batting .130 and put in somebody who's batting .353. A guy that's got extra base hits. A guy that can maybe get a guy that steals bases. Not just a good defensive player. So what is Isbell's defense helping you there in the ninth? I don't get it. Don't understand it. Use the pieces that you have. Because you're limited in your pieces you have because you have a pinch runner on your team that's not really going to play defense for you. And that's unfortunate with Dairon Blanco's Achilles injury. That's kind of what he was there for anyway. But you've got a bench guy that can come in and steal bases, and that's what he does. And then unless it's a blowout or something and the game isn't close, then you can throw him in there in the field. Or maybe he takes an at-bat or two during that game. But it would have been nice to see the Royals find a way to win that game because they've lost both series now, and they've lost both rubber matches. That was a theme last year. It's only one game, right? Cleveland on Sunday was only one game, and that was the rubber match. And the Brewers yesterday was only one game, and that was the rubber match. Now you got 3 against Baltimore, returning home starting tomorrow. You got 4 against the Twins. And if there was a time for them to play the Orioles and the Twins, now is the perfect time. There's no excuse in you caught them at the wrong time. I think the Royals are catching the Orioles and the Twins at the absolute right time for these next 7 games. The Orioles pitching staff is brutal. We talked about that with the Brewers, but Peralta was pretty damn good yesterday. And I think Chad Patrick deserves some credit, too. I talked about that yesterday with Jack and Sterling. But Minnesota continues to be injured, continues to be a team that can't put Lewis, Buxton, and Correa on the field at the same time. And they're not playing particularly great baseball right now. So I think the Royals are getting them at the right time. We'll just see how they look, though, in this next homestand before they head off to Cleveland on April 11th, which will have its own conversation. One more hour to go. Hanging out in San Antonio, it is the Final Four. We've got one of the best collection of teams in the Final Four that we have ever seen, maybe ever, and certainly in the KenPom era, and the numbers back that up. We also have one of the more anticipated Royals seasons that we have had in a long time, and one of the favorites to win the American League Central. And all things considered, they are tied for first. And so we bring in Josh Kaiser, our friend that we have talked with weekly throughout the baseball season last year, and we get a chance to catch up with Josh. Hello, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing great this day. I appreciate you guys having me on. I've been filling my time watching the news and catching up on White Lotus and watching Mizzou basketball. So it's been really bad, really sad state of mind the last few months. So glad to be back on and talking baseball with you boys.
Yes, and that's good. So we get to start off with one of the best offenses in the league to start things off
right
with this 2-4. You know what? Hey, this team is tied for first, 6 games in.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, ask anybody with Cleveland and Detroit and Minnesota and some of the odds to win the Central, and you say, hey, you know what? 6 games in, 2 series, one against Cleveland, one against Milwaukee, both playoff teams, you're going to be tied for first in the American League Central. Okay, great. That's awesome because the Twins played the White Sox. Great, let's do it. Sign me up right now. I didn't expect it to be 2-4, but here we are
on that one too. Yeah,
that's right. But here we are. I didn't expect to be 2-4, but they are. I mean, there is something to take away from that. They're in first place right now. So even with some of the frustrations that might be there with the offense, we're not talking about an early 4-game deficit. We're not discussing the Atlanta Braves and digging out of an 0-7 start and being, already 5 games back of the Phillies for the NL East. So we're not having that.
At least with that, like they can at least point to, our MVP is currently on the on the IL. So maybe when he goes back, our offense starts to hit a rhythm a little bit more. But I don't know where those reinforcements are for the Royals. I can say that.
That's true. And let's talk about some of those things. I think there's deserved frustration with the outfield. I just wonder how much the frustration with the outfield would be there, Josh, and the offensive numbers for the outfield. How much the frustration would be there for the outfield if 2-3-4 wasn't combined to OPS at 657 right now and a batting average of 209. And through 6 games, 2-3-4 has 6 extra base hits. I feel like the frustrations would be tempered a little bit. But because there's a track record with those guys, there's going to be benefit of the doubt, and it is early because you're talking about number 2 in the MVP, Salvi, Vinny when he's healthy, and certainly he looks like he's swinging a pretty good bat, even though the batting average is lower. But I feel like if those guys were performing, we probably have less of a frustration with the outfield because the 2-4 record wouldn't be 2-4 in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It kind of seems like we have picked right back up where we ended the regular season last year when Vinny Pasquantino was out and there was no life in that offense whatsoever, and you're just kind of hoping somebody figures it out soon. And that was the difference the way it was the first 4 months of the season last year because there was never a time when all 3 of those guys weren't doing something, and it did cover up a lot of holes that were obvious down later in the in the lineup, but at the same time, like right now, they're all seemingly going through it. Bobby spent a lot of time in the slump. He gets out to cold starts every year, seemingly, in his young career. But Vinny and Salvi have been the ones kind of carrying the weight, and they haven't been doing that. Vinny's had some, like you said, some tough luck, and I think he's going to, eventually kind of the water finds its level on that front. But Salvi is doing the Salvi thing where he's chasing literally everything he possibly can, and I don't know if they're all just trying to like press a little bit too hard right now because they know someone's got to step up, but it's just pretty piss poor from 2 through 4 right now, and the bottom half of the lineup would be the anchor. It is, but it's just even more magnified now that they have no pulse at the top of the lineup either outside of Jonathan India.
Yeah, I joked about over the weekend that boy, if this team could just find some protection for Jonathan India, like how much better would they be?
If he was just hitting in front of one guy, just any one guy, how many runs would he have right now? 30 probably? Pretty close to 30.
how many times is Jonathan India going to come up to the plate with nobody on base?
Yep.
It is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Yeah,
it's crazy. This continued offensive approach for this team. What do you think, though, of the outfield? Because I'm with you that it doesn't look like reinforcements are right around the corner. Maybe Gavin Cross or maybe Weimer. Hey, Drew Waters hit for the cycle last night, so that's
sure
cool.
did.
But
sure did.
We've also seen him in the big leagues before, so those warts are evident, and we know those. It's sort of the devil you know. Are there reinforcements around the way, or is this one of those to where the Royals will, as they start the season with these guys, they'll remain patient with them until there's like an obvious replacement or something like that?
Yeah, it's hard to say that guys like Drew Waters and Joey Weimer, and I would even say like Tyler Gentry, and I have been a big John Rave guy. The last couple.
You've been raving about him.
I've been raving about Rave. It's hard to say that they couldn't come up and give more. Maybe they're the same at the plate. They can't be much worse than MJ Melendez or Hunter Renfroe. But they're at least giving you base running. They're giving you solid defense. They're giving you versatility to cover potentially center field with Weimer and Waters. So you were talking about it last segment, talking about, getting in a situation where you think you have to play Isbell because you don't have any better options because Dairon Blanco is hurt and Tolbert's not a proven center fielder at the major league level. Neither is Michael Garcia, so you kind of feel like you're obligated to play Isbell. Mm-hmm. If you have a guy like Drew Waters or Joey Weimer, then maybe you don't feel that way anymore. It's hard to say that those guys cannot give more to this team than MJ Melendez and Hunter Renfroe. Hunter Renfroe, it's no secret that his bat is his strength. And, even with his current situation going on, I still feel so much better having him at the plate than I do with MJ Melendez. MJ Melendez, his new swing, whatever he's working on right now, is just all around bad. He's chasing everything. His zone contact rating is 56%. League average is 86%. And that's small sample size, whatever. But that's more indicative to me than what is going on. There has to be someone, even if they're replacement level, they're not dragging this offense down and also not being a super big question mark in the field too. So I think they've got to make a move. MJ can go down. He's got 2 more options. Go let him learn, get a little bit more experience with that new swing, get some confidence with that worse pitching in theory, and see if you can get him right because he is absolutely bringing this outfield down.
But also go down and work on your swing and not worry about results. Just work 100%. On your swing. Because at the big leagues, it's about results. So, you can tinker with some things, but you better perform, and you better come through and produce. And MJ's working on a new swing, and, he went through spring training, and there was some positive signs from it, and there was some also ominous signs through spring training of his swing. And so far early in the year, he's got 1 hit. He struck out, 6 times with 1 walk. He's been on base only 2 times. And 6 Ks. He's batting .077. Like, the swing is not working. I know people joked about the torpedo bats, but you got to make contact for the torpedo bat to work. So that's
correct.
Tough for him. But it would be this would make sense with go down there, and it's not even find your confidence. It's work on your swing. And I don't care if you are 0 for 4 3 days in a row. Sorry, Omaha, that sucks. But I don't care that you're 0 for 4 3 days in a row. Find your swing, perfect it, then get some confidence. Then we'll see you back up here. But until then, we can't have you in the lineup because you're offering almost nothing. In fact, pretty much nothing to the lineup. And they already have that in center field and right field.
Yep. You can't have that many holes in the lineup, that especially not from the corner outfield spots are usually offensive producers. And you can't have voids at all 3 spots every game. You could throw India out in left field and cover that up, but at the same time, like, he's still very inexperienced. So I don't know. They're rotating, they're throwing stuff at the wall, and it is what it is. But at the end of the day, you just can't have that, especially in a year where you're expected to be competing for the division that you are leading. I'll give you that. You are leading the division, obviously, but at the same time, it can't be done. You're wasting these great starting pitching performances that we saw in Milwaukee specifically on just days where you can't get anything going at the plate. You just can't have that. They just more indicative of it. They've had 3 situations where they have had Manfred runners on second, and they have failed to score in 2 of them. So you can't do that and still expect to compete at the major league level.
Josh Kaiser is our guest. The outfield overall, and we'll see what that ends up being. I said yesterday we were hanging out with Jack Johnson and Sterling on the air and Dylan, and I said, what it looks like right now, obviously there's a lot of projection as to what it'll be late in the season, but if I'm guessing at this point, mid to late August and September, if there is a divisional chase, the outfield is, if I'm guessing, Garcia in center, Jack in right, and a trade in left field. Maybe that's Taylor Ward or somebody else, but that is my guess as to what the outfield looks like, as opposed to Isbel, Renfroe, and MJ Melendez that have combined 5 for 47 this year so far. And one of those hits was a sun ball by Stephen Kwan and Hunter Renfroe in the double. So that's my guess, is that Garcia is probably in center, because I'm hoping what he's done, there's more staying power with that. And maybe there is more of a fast track with Jack Caglione in right field with what we've seen early on. If you're predicting, is it close to that? Is it Isbel because they love his defense so much that other guys added to the lineup will make up for his lack of offense? What do you think this outfield could look like in August or September if they are leading or right in the chase in the hunt for a division?
I can see a situation where in that configuration, I totally understand that. I still think they need someone else, another bat, because that you're still probably leaning on Kevin Biggio or Freddie Fermin in the DH spot. And if that spot is still kind of a turnstile position, then why not have Jack come up and do what Jack does in the DH spot, and then look to someone like, I'm going to say it, see what Gavin Cross is doing, and see if he is a viable glove out in right field or left field, and then see if you need to acquire someone on the opposite side just to see if it's Taylor Ward. Awesome. There's other guys that, might be available, but at the same time, those internal options are going to be where it's at. And I could totally see a time in July and August where both those guys are producing at their relative levels, and it's time to go. So I could totally see that outcome coming to fruition. And if that's the case, if you're just asking Jack Caglione to come be your DH in July and August without, any pressure of playing a lot of defense every day, then I think that's best case scenario. And hopefully that's how it goes. Hopefully Gavin Cross is inserting himself back into the conversation around that time. And, the glove has never really been that big of a question mark. So if his bat is even remotely, viable at the major league level, then giddy up.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then even, Jack can play first base, which is his natural position, right? I guess, natural position, more outfield, what he went to Florida for, or pitch, whatever. And then, give Vinny the opportunity to DH, and then figure out a way where Salvi, Vinny, and Jack Caglione are in the lineup every day, but DHing first base, Salvi a day off, but maybe DHing, Salvi a day off, maybe playing first, like whatever it might be, figure out a way that those three guys are in the lineup every day. And I would say, like, Gavin Cross, I don't know much about his defense. I know he's got a pretty good arm from what we've seen in the minors. If he plays more of a representative right field as opposed to the slug in right field right now in Renfroe, then I'm assuming he can go 2 for every 18 at the plate.
Yes.
And if he goes 2 for every 18 and offers better defense, it's now automatically an upgrade from what you're getting from Hunter Renfroe, which I'll take.
Yep.
Like, the one thing Renfroe had going for him was his arm, and that seems to be shot.
Oh, those opening day throws he had just hurt me. They were so bad.
Yeah, I wish they would have hurt a glove, but I don't think that's happening. It's been a while since that's
well done.
You hurt my palm. He threw it so hard. No, not anymore.
Or at least, he didn't have to throw it hard, just hit it up the third base line instead of behind the plate. It's just, I don't know. That was the only thing he had going. That's the only redeeming quality he had on the field, and it seems to have been at least very rusty, if not completely gone.
Yeah. My theory on that, and there might be baseball guys and major league players or anybody with the Royals, they listen a lot to the show.
Sure.
They might say, Jason, you are absolutely dumb. You have no idea what you're talking about. My theory is the reason he's missing up the third base line is, one, because his arm it seems like it's gone. But so often when you're throwing the ball that hard from that far of distance, there's that tail to the arm side. And if he's throwing it where he typically would aim in years past, that will tail back to the third base side, but he no longer has the juice behind it. It's not moving the way that it has in the past, and so it's just staying on the third base side. That's my theory on why he continues to miss to the wrong side of home plate.
Which, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. I think that especially that second catch he did he was in foul territory kind of going that direction, so there could be something to that too. But at the same time, like, this is your job. I mean, you got to figure it out or get out of the way. And Hunter Renfrow is part of the problem, but he is not even remotely close to the problem by himself. So there's plenty of sacrificial goats we can throw out there and say, why aren't you doing this better? But at the end of the day, it's at least 2 or 3 of these guys need to step up.
Let's have some fun now. Josh Kaiser is our guest. Maikel Garcia, how are you? Are you a believer in this? Because I am, and I know last year at this time people were pumped about the added power that he went with, the new swing, and he was going to hit more home runs. And he hit those 4 home runs by the end of April, and then he hit 3 more the rest of the year, and he did not look like he did in 2023. I was excited about him going back to the 2023 swing, the toe tap, more of the flat swing, staying in the zone longer, which is one of the best things about his swing, and coming out batting .350 now to start the season. I'm not saying he's a .350 batter or an on-base percentage of .420, but is there something here to Maikel Garcia that it isn't just a hot start, that going back to maybe what made him a good, solid, almost league average hitter is there, and is we're going to see that this year rather than the guy who OPS 600 last year?
I'm still very optimistic about Maikel Garcia. I came out pretty pessimistic about it, but I started looking at some of the peripheral stuff in the offseason. I was like, well, this is a guy, especially he's like 24, 25 years old, that is probably, he's doing everything you want to see peripherally, hitting the ball hard pretty consistently, has the max exit velocities are there, play discipline is there, his own contact's good. He's just kind of getting unlucky, and he's one of the most unlucky guys when it comes to, fringe calls. So I think that's kind of a weird anomaly. He's got a good eye, and he's got good discipline. So it all looked coming into the season that this is a kid that I would probably want to bet on, and especially if he's going to play any center field, that profile will absolutely play. If he's going 250, 350, and 400 as a slug, as a center fielder, that's game on. That's not necessarily great for a third baseman, but it is something you can actually potentially depend on. If it's at the lower half of the lineup, great, but it's somebody you might be able to lead off for you over in 2-3 week spans. That's a guy that I would want to invest in. So some of that stuff coming into the year, I thought, maybe we'll see what happens, but he has absolutely shown that. He's hit a ball 430 feet, and I don't remember him doing that in his career prior to that. And it was a center field shot. It wasn't just like a jet stream pulled down the line, barely fair left field home run. He did not get cheated on that 430. So it's something that, I'm going to keep looking at, but I'm feeling pretty optimistic about what Maikel Garcia could be for this Royals lineup.
Yeah, there's 2 guys in the lineup that are batting .350 or better, and that's Jonathan India at the number 1 spot and Maikel Garcia. And I said, last hour, Josh, that, boy, if you'd have told me 6 games into the season that India's batting .350 and getting on base the way that he is, and Maikel Garcia's batting .350 and has 4 extra base hits, 2 doubles, 2 home runs, and doing what he's doing, are the Royals averaging 8 runs per game? Because that's your leadoff hitter in your number 8 spot. Like, they were terrible at the bottom of the order, and they couldn't get anybody on base in front of Bobby. And, oh, by the way, Vinny's been unlucky, but, boy, he looks locked in. All right, let's roll, man. It is Katie bar the door with this bullpen and that pitching staff. Are they 6-0 right now?
Massey is okay, but not terrible. Right. It's
good point. Yeah,
they are winning the AL Central right now, so that is good.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly what I'm saying. But it is it hasn't been that case. But I do think there's a positive because, again, I don't expect 234 to bat 200 all year.
Yeah,
to get on base at less than 300. I don't think that's going to be the case with those guys. Salvi will get hot and carry a team for a month. Bobby will be an MVP favorite, and Vinny's a guy that just knows how to drive in runs. It's just what he's done in his career. Let's talk about the bullpen because it's been Jekyll and Hyde, and it's not a surprise with the Jekyll part, not a surprise with the Hyde part, whichever, if that's good or bad, I'm not sure. But Zerpa hasn't looked great, and Sam Long did not pick up where he left off last year in September and in the postseason. But with Harvey, Urseg, Estevez, and now Daniel Lynch, that's 4 guys that, if you're in the postseason, every night those guys should be able to go because you're talking about winning every single game. I'm not saying it's HDH, but it's got to feel like that. And they can't do it every single night, so you need your pitchers to go deeper into games, and you'd like to have Cole Reagans be more pitch efficient. But, man, that the bullpen of the guys that you hope – and Schreiber looked fine last night too, so I don't want to leave him out. And Daniel Lynch has looked really good. But with the guys you were hoping would look good in the bullpen, that has, passed every test so far, and I'm pumped about what the 7th, 8th, and 9th could be for this team throughout the season with those guys.
Yeah, and arguably those are – I mean, not arguably. It's inarguably that those are the guys that you want. The back end of the bullpen needs to be the guys that are looking and exceeding, meeting if not exceeding expectations, and that's exactly what's happened. Carlos Estevez getting out of that yesterday was some crazy stuff. I mean, that was some HDH stuff right there. That was an electric moment that the loss kind of takes away from it, but seeing him able to get out of that surefire loss, getting walked off, he's got an L beside his name in the box score. Seeing him get out of that situation was so encouraging that you just never know what you're going to get with relievers, period. But seeing him and Harvey and Erceg just lighten stuff up towards the end of the bullpen, and that's one of those things where the offensive struggles is really going to magnify the low leverage to mid leverage relievers that you have. That's the reason that we're even talking about the bullpen, because if we're talking about we haven't seen Sam Long multiple times, really. We haven't seen Chris Stratton at all. The back end of the bullpen has been shutting the door on these guys because 4 runs is enough. Like, that's what we're talking about. And we're talking about a 4-2 Royals team with, the world ahead of them, as opposed to the 2-4 with huge question marks. So those are the guys that you need to look good, and they do look the part. Daniel Lynch has been really good. I mean, there was times where even the fastball, that is one of arguably his worst pitches, was still kind of fooling guys. So if that's working, everything's working, and Daniel Lynch is another guy you can go towards. And if we're talking about Chris Stratton, if we're talking about Sam Long, if we're talking about Angel Zerpa, those are all guys that you're probably looking at mid to low leverage roles, and you have like Alec Marsh, you have Jonathan Bolin, you have options down in Omaha that can potentially insert themselves into the conversation if those guys aren't working out. And if that's the case, you're still talking about a low to mid leverage where those guys can be picked up, or they're on mop-up duty anyway, so who cares? So the bullpen, I'm not super worried about it. Everything you want to kind of come out is coming out and looking like what you want it to look like, so I'm not super concerned about that.
The fastball that you were talking about yesterday, and again, all of the pitches that Daniel Lynch has thrown this year, it's been a limited number of innings so far, but with that particular fastball, he hasn't given up a base hit on it so far this year, and so there's an expected batting average to it, but who cares at this point? Predictive measures, yes, we can get into that. We can get into that as it goes along. But in his career, the 4-seam fastball was batters hit 385. In 2022, they hit 304. And in 2023, they hit 284. Last year, 226, and this year, 0-0-0. The Cal Eldred to, this regime and Sweeney and whoever, but also it's not just Daniel Lynch. Like, Chris Bubich's fastball looks different. And he's playing off his fastball and not just, I'm a changeup guy. Cole Reagans lived on his fastball yesterday. And I know he already has a good one, but he lived on his fastball yesterday. Like, he was getting swings and misses on his fastball.
Like
yeah, right. I think that's his career high. I think that's what I saw. I think Lesky may have put that out there, that was his career high in whiffs. Like, I don't know if there's something to that where, these guys that have Cole Reagans certainly expected, but definitely when it's come with Bubic and Lynch that have had their struggles over the years with a certain, coaching staff that both now look like completely different pitchers, and a particular pitch that has really progressed to the point that it becomes a weapon in just, a fastball. That seems cool. Like, you don't have to be Seth Lugo sometimes to, fool guys. Sometimes a fastball can do the work for you. I think that's more than just coincidental with these guys and this coaching staff.
Yeah, and some of those, he gave some hard hit foul balls off that fastball in the Cleveland series specifically. So I think there will come a time where he is going to get hit on that. I mean, obviously the 0-0-0 batting average is not going to sustain, but if that is like your, I mean, he kind of lives off the changeup at the curve. So if you're able to set those other two pitches up successfully while getting by with a low to maybe mid-90s fastball that isn't straight, then you're going to probably be just fine, especially in an inning or two here and there. So I think that, them being able to maximize his value in this role is pretty big. I mean, they talked about on the broadcast, like him kind of taking on this new role, and they went back to Will Smith saying, hey, mid-relief pitchers drive nice cars too. And I love that quote so much that they brought that up in the broadcast, because that sounds like something that could get those guys that are former starters that are really trying to still be a starter to embrace that mid-relief role and still provide value as best as they possibly can. So it's really good to see Daniel Lynch kind of take it up and give him another option and kind of hopefully take on the role that Angel Zerpa is not necessarily filling right now.
Yeah, he has thrown, I believe the number is 8 changeups this year, and he has 5 swings and misses on his 8
They're bad,
changeups
too. They're
so far.
bad swings,
yes.
too. It's just that's my favorite part about changeups is you can really tell how good things are going by the swing of the batter, and there's been some really bad pitches or really bad swings on that changeup.
Yeah, I mean, he's been working mostly slider, fastball, fastball, slider, then throwing in the changeup and getting swings and misses, throwing in the sinker from time to time. But, it's that changeup has been a pretty good pitch that he's thrown in there every once in a while. And as you said, like, he's getting some bad swings on it. And he's getting those because he's been living fastball, slider, and been effective. And so guys are waiting for either somewhat of the hook or something that's coming, at 94. And then the changeup drops in there at 85 and goes the other way than what they were expecting. So that's pretty good. I think the Royals, as we let you go, Josh, I think over these next 7 games, I think the Royals are getting the Orioles and the Twins at the right time. Sometimes it's better it's better when you play a team as opposed to which team you're playing. I wouldn't want to play the White Sox right now. Break them up,
Yep.
They are hot.
Yep.
Break them up. They are 2-4.
Powerhouse.
Okay. They're 2-4. Nobody wants to play the White Sox. They've got a positive run differential.
What a low bar that is, by the way.
You're so right about that. It's like, again, such a low bar. 2-4. They are 4 on. They should really Pythagorean. They should be 3-3. They're unlucky this year. The White Sox.
Oh man. I mean, we lived off that last year, not even last year, last decade seemingly. Like, they're not this bad. They should be 5 games better than their 100-loss season.
Yeah, that's right. They should have actually won 68 games that year.
Yeah,
not just 62. What's the deal there? But Baltimore's pitching staff is struggling, and Minnesota, surprisingly, Minnesota Twins are the Los Angeles Chargers. They can't stay healthy, and every year they talk about, boy, if they were healthy, what would they look like? Yeah, well, they're not. So do you agree this is a good time to catch the Orioles and the Twins over these next 7 games?
I mean, kind of. Gunnar Henderson is now expected to be back on Friday, so you're kind of getting them back. Yeah. I drafted him in my fantasy baseball league, and it's been a real problem with having him out because I've been having to pay Carlos Correa at shortstop every day, and that's been a real problem. So I've been counting down the days that Gunnar Henderson's back. Just kind of a bummer that it's the Royals who get to see him first. But I don't know. Their starting pitching is certainly a problem, but it's a stoppable force versus a extremely movable object when it comes to their starting pitchers versus this Royals offense. So I don't expect them to be able to get to even weak starting pitchers at this point, but hey, it's exactly what you want to see. And I don't want to see as much as the Twins have been, underachieving the first week of the season. You're going to see Woods Richardson, Pablo Lopez, and then Ryan Ober. And all those guys absolutely dominate the Royals, so I don't necessarily love those pitching matchups whatsoever, especially at the time that this offense is struggling so much. So as much as I, want to say that we're catching them at the right time and, we're going to rattle one off, I just don't know if I'm betting on that at this point. But, I love the optimism. I used to be Captain Optimism, and now I'm Captain Realism for some reason. I don't know.
That's fine.
White Lotus has really killed my positivity, I think.
I get it. Yeah, no, that's fine. Just steal my sunshine. I appreciate it.
Yep.
I'm just, excited about this weekend.
I'm glad someone's picking up the mantle and running with it. I'm really, I'm a proud father figure.
There you go. I like how you made me out to be someone who's not realistic. I used to be positive like you, but now I'm a realist. Okay.
Do these are those little moral victories that we set up. That's like, maybe they got a shot this week. Maybe we set these up. It's expectation season where these teams, we expect postseason this year, and I need to see some results. Give me a little show me state, show me, give me something to see.
Against the Orioles, which team's weakness is exposed more, the Royals offense or the Orioles pitching staff? We'll see. Josh Kaiser, no weakness in his game as he joins us to talk some Royals. Josh, you're the man. Appreciate it, brother. Good catching up with you, man.
Yeah, 100%. I look forward to the next time. You boys take care.
Absolutely, you too. There's Josh Kaiser. Great stuff from him, talking some Royals baseball. We will take a timeout. We'll come back. Couple segments to go here in San Antonio with the Final Four hanging out and bringing you the sights and sounds of Radio Row with Westwood One. We continue more Zone right after this. to Josh Kaiser joining us talking some Royals baseball. Series number 3 starting tomorrow against the Baltimore Orioles. The 7-game homestand starting tomorrow as well for the Royals. Seth Lugo will be on the mound, and let's see if the Royals bats can break out and the boys can start playing some ball. We'll see if that's the case. 913-912-4810 is the text line. News out of Lawrence, not surprising. We didn't get to this earlier in the show, but not a surprise, the news out of Lawrence, and that is A.J. Storr has entered the transfer portal. You know what? Actually, it is surprising.
I was about to say. It's surprising, it took this long?
100%.
Yeah. We're on the same page there, actually.
It's surprising. You and I both at the same time. It's surprising it took this long.
Yep.
That's the surprise that A.J. Storr is in the transfer portal. Not that he's in. Like, that's
it's almost like everyone expects me to do this. Yes. I'm not doing it. I'm gonna do this.
Right. It's like if we weren't following it here in Kansas City, if nationally you were just like, oh wait, hold on, he hadn't already put his name in the. I thought he already put his name in the transfer.
Hey, call
portal.
on A.J. Storr, sir. He's not in the portal yet. Really? Okay. Well, wait it out a bit.
Does he have a no contact tag? Why can't we talk to A.J. Storr right now? He's not in the portal. I mean, are you kidding me? That leaves now KU with 3 scholarship players out of the what will be 15 scholarships available for colleges to use now with the revenue sharing and the added scholarships that they are bringing in to schools. And every single minute that was played this year by anybody on scholarship is no longer returning to Kansas. And like I said, blank slate. I mean, hopefully the health of Elmarco Jackson is there. Jamari McDowell, redshirted. Bryson Tiller, redshirted. And now, Darren Peterson. And that's, that's what it's going to be about is Darren Peterson. And Calderon, we'll see, how good he is. It's funny, he's just the number 73 player in the country. So really, how much can he help the team? Only the number 73 player in America.
And it's almost like a 73, and then we have to add in all the portal players, and then we'll see if he's the 73rd best. And it's like they almost have to compete now with kids that are already in college 2 or 3 years. And that is like the problem a lot of these coaches in high school, AAU coaches are starting to come out and say is a problem. It's almost like the, how like the Aussie kickers that are like 30 years old and the punters and stuff there was a big outcry about those kids losing scholarships, those punters and kickers in high school. And now it's almost like turned up, 10 times with NIL.
Yeah. And it's a good point because with all the players in the transfer portal, it's like 10 years ago, Calderon would be this, according to, different websites, the 70th, 75th best player that somebody can bring in America.
Basically the 70th best free agent. Now there's multitude of free agents. There was only, this class of high schoolers that you had to pick from, and maybe like a couple transfers that were grad students. Yeah, that's about it. And
now it's packed. I'll say it again, and people probably get tired of me saying this. I would be excited if I was I understand the nervousness around it because of the last 2 years with Bill Self, and I think it is a pretty crucial offseason. It's a pretty crucial year for Bill Self to show that he can do this in the transfer portal NIL era. And eventually we'll say NIL era, but starting next year it's revenue sharing era, because according to the NCAA, the quote-unquote NIL that we joked around with Porter Moser about and saying, everything's NIL, and it's like, well, is it NIL? And he's like, yeah, we can laugh about it. The NCAA has said they are going to crack down and make sure it is true NIL outside of the revenue sharing is there, so you can just pay the players. It's pay for play now. It's pay for play on the books. Let's just call it that way. It's been pay for play for a while, but pay for play on the books. Revenue, the NIL is going to be no. If you're going to get NIL, the NCAA is going to make sure that it is legit and actual NIL. We'll see. We'll see. Right. As Jerry Tarkanian said, the NCAA is so pissed at Kentucky that they just banned Cleveland State from the tournament. We'll see who they actually go after and crack down on true NIL or things like that. But in the what is going to be revenue sharing era of college athletics, how does Bill Self survive? How does he assess talent? What's his process? And what was wrong with the last couple of years? Was it the loyalty to DeJuan Harris and KJ Adams that ultimately cost them because you had one more year and they were coming back, and Bill Self wasn't going to move away from those guys because of the culture that was built there at Kansas and an expectation when you entered the program, this is how you were expected to play. Hunter Dickinson returning. He was the best free agent out there 2 years ago, but turns out that it wasn't really worth the money the last 2 years. Probably would have been worth it to keep Ejiofor. But you realize those things now. Okay, you've got some experience in this. So what happens now? Is it just all about shooters? I think I saw today Jeff Goodman, tweeted out, again, one of the breaking news like an hour ago, one of the best shooters, in the transfer portal committed to Louisville. And like 3 of the top 5 shooters from behind the arc in the transfer portal are now in the backcourt for Louisville. They've got 3 guys that committed to them that are combined like 315 threes last year or something like that. There's a clear strategy from that standpoint for that program as to what they're doing. Other coaches have different strategies around it as well. And it's not like Bill Self didn't have that strategy before. Nick Timberlake came in, just didn't work out. Rylan Griffin was supposed to be that catch-and-shoot three-pointer that can spread the floor. Didn't work out. A.J. Storr, a scorer, didn't work out. But a guy who was a high-volume ball handler and high-volume scorer in A.J. Storr was not going to work in Bill Self's system. That's where Darren Peterson is going to have to conform to a degree because he's a high-volume on-ball player. Like, he's going to be controlling the offense, and with Bill Self, it's going to be a little bit different. Is he going to be allowed to do that? I think KU will finally have somebody at the end of the game where you would just give him the ball. It's, run the give and go. Give it to him, go away. And let Darren Peterson go and create and see if he can do some of those things that, I'm not comparing him to Cooper Flagg. I'm not doing that. But Cooper Flagg's game being somebody who can score but also creates for teammates because he's a really good passer, that's what they're expecting Darren Peterson to do. Be somebody that can be the focal point of the offense and not a point center like Hunter Dickinson being somewhat of the focal point of the offense. Be more guard-oriented. Like we talked about when it was – what was the game where they were trying to get it into Hunter and it didn't work out? And it was, KJ or somebody else that had the ball. They inbounded it to him. And it was it Arkansas?
Was it the Big 12 tournament?
Yeah, or the Big 12 tournament. One of those last two. All these games run
together. It was the one
man.
where KJ just threw it out of bounds or threw it away. Or
he tried to dribble and
was that the UCF game at Big 12 tourney?
I cannot remember, to be honest with you.
I almost feel like that was where they had the play drawn up for someone else and KJ just kept the ball because they doubled him.
Yeah, I don't think it was. Yeah, they had the play drawn up for Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunt. It was the play was to Hunt. But we just didn't run it correctly. But we'll be fine as we move forward. But you have a guy who's a big man that's your go-to guy. He needs somebody else to get him the ball. Your go-to guy is a guard. All right. Or a ball handler, I should say.
He's all if your big guy's your go-to guy nowadays, he's got to have guard qualities. He can't just be a massive, redwood tree out there like Hunter was.
Yeah.
Like Hunter, he was athletic, he could shoot the three, but he wasn't gonna, beat some other center or a 4 off the dribble. He was, he was kind of a statue for today's NBA basketball.
Well, I mean, Cooper Flagg isn't a guard necessarily, but he's the guy that you put the ball in his hands and let him go.
He can do
create.
everything,
Yeah, and I think that's the hope with Peterson next year, that he would be that guy. But they have no minutes returning on this team that played in any game scholarship-wise last year. El Marco, if he's healthy, that makes a big difference, but it's a clean slate. And, you can change your team around quickly from one year to the next. I'll be fascinated to see what Missouri does because they have so many returning guys. And we talked about retention. What does K-State do? Because it's an obviously massive year for Jerome Tang. It's, the most critical year in sort of expectation terms from the program they're at. I think the most critical year is Jerome Tang. I actually think the second one, because of expectations where they're at, would be Bill Self. Because Kansas is not expected to be a team that finishes that far down in the Big 12 a couple of years in a row and then loses in the first round and is not in the second weekend of the tournament and having, double-digit losses. That's not, Kansas. That's not what you're expected to be at Kansas. Missouri, Dennis Gates left a lot to be desired there the last game of the season against Drake, but it's 2 out of 3 years they've made the tournament when they went how long from even making the tournament or winning a game? Like one time making the tournament since 2012 with Frank Haith's first year. I guess the second year they were a 9 seed. So his second year. And then they made it once with Konzo when the Porters were there. And then Dennis Gates gets there and goes to 2 out of 3, wins a tournament game a couple of years ago. So, yeah, it's a big year for him. But as far as, like, the other 2 programs, Jerome Tang, it's a huge year to show that that first year was not just some complete outlier for his career. And Bill Self, you don't want to have 3 years in a row of this sort of trend and go, well, is Kansas still Kansas? You know, is Bill Self still Bill Self? And I think that's where the sort of excitement comes in with a clean slate and go out and work the transfer portal and build the roster there almost from scratch with El Marco and Peterson and sort of start from that standpoint.
Dennis Gates did it. I mean, Dennis Gates, you know, you say 2 out of 3 years, and it's like also that 1 year he didn't make it, he took it from basically the bottom of the barrel in the SEC to where it is today, which is really an outstanding achievement in its own right.
Yeah, and, you know, obviously whether it was health or not, but they brought a number of guys in, got them to play together, and made a good run this year. And unfortunately, they went up against a Drake team that was just better than they were that particular night. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling, wrapping up the show here from the Final Four Radio Row here in San Antonio as our coverage presented by Easton Roofing and National VA Loans. More Zone right after this. things up here on this Thursday edition of The Zone, hanging out in the Final Four in San Antonio. The NIT Championship coming up tonight right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Chattanooga taking on UC Irvine. Dylan, who you got in this one? Big matchup. Big matchup. UC Irvine, Chattanooga. What are you feeling? What's the breakdown for you?
Man, I like both team names. I was just going to go with Chattanooga until you said UC Irvine. But
the Mocs and the Anteaters.
Give me the Anteaters.
Yeah, the Anteaters. They're
UC Irvine.
3.5-point favorites. 3.5-point favorites in the game tonight. So we'll see. You can hear that right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. I guess their Crown playing tonight too.
Oh yeah,
is the Crown going on tonight?
Yeah, the Crown. Much anticipated college basketball tournament at the same time as the Final Four. So.
Yeah, so we've got the Crown tournament going on tonight, and I'm pretty sure one of the matchups. It's the Big 12 matchup, UCF and Cincinnati tonight in the Crown. So they'll face off for the third time. I don't know how many times they played each other. Villanova, USC. So there you go. There's some college basketball going on tonight. No Royals tonight, but the NIT. Also, you got the 3-point shootout in the dunk contest. Caleb Grill will be participating in the 3-point shootout tonight.
Got to do the Larry Bird.
All-Stars.
Walk in there. Who's finishing second?
Yeah, that's right.
What we need.
Or move the rack 5 feet back behind the arc. Then he's comfortable.